It begins before the sun even rises, with the sharp, insistent call of an alarm. And in that first waking moment, the world rushes in, the phone screen illuminates, a portal to an endless stream of notifications, emails, and expectations. The mind immediately follows, compiling lists, replaying conversations, anticipating the hurdles of the day ahead. This is the rhythm of our lives, a relentless pulse that pushes us forward, a constant hum of doing, achieving, and striving. We navigate a cacophony of noise, both outside of us and within us, a world that demands our attention at every turn, leaving little room for silence, a little space to simply be. But beneath this surface of constant motion, a different feeling often takes root. It is a quiet sense of being lost, a subtle feeling of stagnation. Even as we are running faster than ever, we might have everything we thought we wanted: a successful career, a busy social life, a world of information at our fingertips. And yet, a quiet hollowness persists. It is the feeling of being disconnected from our own core, a state of inner exile where we are strangers in our own minds. This is the true dis-ease of our time, a deep and pervasive anxiety born from a mind that never rests, a heart that has forgotten its own language of peace. We are caught in a current, so busy trying to stay afloat that we forget we have the capacity to find solid ground within ourselves. For thousands of years, however, wise men and women have explored this very territory. They too have faced the restless mind and the aching heart, and from their deep exploration, a path was illuminated. This path is offered not as a rigid dogma or a distant faith, but as a profound and practical art of living, a gentle science of the mind. It suggests that the answer to our inner turmoil does not lie in changing the world outside, for the world will always be in flux. It does not lie in acquiring more, for possessions cannot fill an inner void. The answer, the path to true and lasting peace, begins with a simple, courageous turn. A turn inward. This journey we are about to embark on is precisely that. A journey into the landscape of your own mind, to discover the tools needed to quiet the noise, to soothe the anxieties, and to awaken the profound stillness that has been waiting for you all along. Before we take another step on this path, let us perform a small experiment together. Right here, right now, find a comfortable posture, and if you feel at ease, gently close your eyes for just the next minute. Your only task is to do nothing. Simply rest. Try not to think of anything at all. Let the mind become a perfect, silent, empty space. How did you fare? If you are like most of us, that silent, empty space was likely filled within seconds. Perhaps a fragment of a song drifted through, maybe an image from yesterday, or a worry about tomorrow, a sudden itch on your arm, a mental note to buy milk. The silence you sought was instantly populated by a host of uninvited guests. This, my friend, is the first and most fundamental truth of our inner world. We live with an unquiet mind. In the ancient teachings, this ceaseless mental activity is given a wonderfully evocative name, the monkey mind. Picture it. Imagine a restless monkey in a vast forest, swinging from one branch to another, never still for more than a heartbeat. It shrieks at a shadow, chatters incessantly, grabs for a piece of fruit, takes one bite, and immediately drops it to chase after a fluttering leaf. It is impulsive, scattered, and easily distracted. This is the state of our untrained mind. It leaps from a memory of the past to an anxiety about the future. It fixates on a grievance from a decade ago, then jumps to planning dinner. It replays an embarrassing moment on a loop, then gets lost in a fantasy about winning the lottery. This inner chatter is so constant, so familiar, that for most of our lives, we don't even notice it's happening. It is like the faint hum of a refrigerator in your home. You only become aware of it when it suddenly stops. We have become so accustomed to the noise that we mistake it for the silence. We believe this constant stream of commentary, judgment, and worry is the very essence of who we are. We think that we are the monkey, but here lies the first great liberation, the first key that can begin to unlock our inner prison. You are not the monkey. You are not your thoughts. This is a revolutionary idea, and it bears repeating. Your thoughts are not you. They are simply events in consciousness. They are temporary, fleeting phenomena that arise and pass away, like clouds drifting across the vast, open sky. Imagine yourself as that sky. The sky is boundless, clear, and fundamentally peaceful. Some days, fluffy white clouds drift by. Other days, dark, heavy storm clouds gather and release rain. But through it all, the sky remains unchanged, unstained, and unharmed. The storm is an event in the sky, but it is not the sky itself. Our suffering begins the moment we forget we are the sky and believe we are the storm. A thought of sadness appears, and we say, "I am sad." A thought of anger arises, and we declare, "I am an angry person." A thought of failure passes through, and we conclude, "I am a failure." We collapse the vastness of our being into the small, temporary weather pattern of a single thought or emotion. We give these fleeting mental events a power and a solidity they do not possess. We build our identity out of these ephemeral clouds, and then wonder why our peace is so fragile and dependent on the weather. The first step in reclaiming your identity as the sky is to learn the art of observation. It is the simple, yet profound, act of noticing your thoughts without getting entangled in them. This is the critical difference between thinking and being aware that you are thinking. When you are lost in thought, you are the monkey, swinging wildly from branch to branch, completely identified with the drama. But the moment you can step back and say, "Ah, there is the monkey mind, jumping around again," you are no longer the monkey. You are the witness. You are the calm, compassionate observer watching the monkey's antics. In that moment of recognition, a space is created. A tiny gap of light appears between you and your thoughts. This space is the beginning of freedom. You don't need to fight the thoughts, suppress them, or judge them. In fact, fighting them only gives them more energy. Judging yourself for having bad thoughts is like adding a second storm on top of the first. The practice is far more gentle. It is simply to notice there is a worrying thought, there is a planning thought, there is a memory. You greet them with a neutral, almost scientific curiosity. You are not the content of the thought. You are the awareness that is aware of the thought. There is a beautiful old story that illustrates this principle perfectly. A man came upon a pond of water, and he heard that at its very bottom lay a precious gem. He longed to see this gem, but the water was completely opaque, filled with swirling mud and sediment. His first instinct was to get rid of the mud. He waded into the pond and began to thrash about, trying to push the mud to the sides, trying to scoop the cloudy water away with his hands. But all his frantic efforts only served to stir up the bottom even more, making the water thicker and darker than before. Exhausted and frustrated, he finally gave up. He sat down on the bank of the pond, defeated, and simply watched the murky water. He sat there for a long, long time, in stillness and patience. And as he sat, a quiet miracle occurred. The mud, no longer being agitated, slowly, gently, began to settle. The heaviest particles sank first, followed by the lighter ones. Little by little, the water began to clear, and after some time, with no effort at all on his part, the water became so transparent that he could see right through to the bottom, where the brilliant gem lay, shining in the clear light. Our mind is that pond. Our thoughts, worries, and fears are the mud. For our entire lives, we have been thrashing about, trying to force our minds to be clear, trying to fight our thoughts into submission. We struggle and strive, only to make the water murkier. The wisdom of the path lies in the man's final action to sit in stillness. It is the practice of allowing. We allow the thoughts to be there, without stirring them up with judgment or resistance. We simply watch, and in that patient, non-judgmental awareness, the mud of our thinking begins to settle all on its own. The mind's natural state, just like the water's, is one of clarity and brilliance. We do not need to create this clarity. We only need to cease the agitation that obscures it. This is the first step. It is the act of turning to face our own inner world, not as a battlefield, but as a space for gentle observation. Now that we have acknowledged this constant, restless noise, this inner state of agitation, we are ready to ask the next profound question. What is the true nature of this unease? What is this fundamental dissatisfaction that keeps the monkey mind swinging, that keeps the mud forever stirred? This inquiry leads us directly to the heart of the Buddha's first great teaching, the understanding of what is known as dukkha. Having sat with the restless energy of the unquiet mind, we arrive at the very foundation of the Buddha's teaching. It is a teaching that, when first encountered, can seem jarring, even pessimistic. It is the first noble truth, often translated from the ancient Pali language as the truth of suffering. But to truly understand the depth of this wisdom, we must set aside the heavy, dark cloak that the English word suffering implies. The original word is dukkha, and its meaning is far more subtle, nuanced, and profound. Dukkha is not just about tragedy, pain, and despair. Think of it less as a gaping wound and more as a constant, low-grade fever that subtly colors our entire existence. Imagine a finely crafted wooden cart with one wheel that is just slightly off-center. The cart still moves forward. It still carries its load. But the journey is perpetually marked by a subtle, irritating bumpiness, a vibration of discontent, that pervasive, underlying vibration of unsatisfactoriness, that sense that things are just not quite right, is the essence of dukkha. To acknowledge dukkha is not to be morbid or negative. It is to be a realist. It is the most courageous and compassionate diagnosis of the human condition ever offered. For it is only by understanding the nature of the illness that we can ever hope to find the cure. The Buddha, like a master physician, explained that this illness of dukkha manifests in three distinct, though interconnected, ways. The first is the most obvious, the form we all know intimately. It is called dukkha, the suffering of pain. This is the raw, unmistakable hardship of life. It is the physical pain of a headache, of a chronic illness, of an aging body that no longer moves as it once did. It is the sharp emotional pain of losing someone you love, the sting of betrayal from a trusted friend, the anxiety of facing an uncertain future, the hollow ache of loneliness. It is the stress of financial hardship, the frustration of your plans going awry, the grief that comes with seeing those you care for in pain. This is the suffering that makes us cry out, that brings us to our knees. It is unavoidable, a fundamental texture of existence in this world. No amount of wealth, power, or planning can build a wall high enough to keep out the realities of sickness, old age, and death. This is the first layer, the clear and undeniable truth that life contains pain. But if the path only addressed this obvious pain, it would be incomplete, because much of life is not overtly painful. In fact, much of it is pleasant, and this is where the second, more subtle form of dukkha arises. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the anxiety that is woven into the very fabric of our happiness. It is the pain that comes from the fact that pleasant experiences do not last. Think of the most perfect, joyful moment you can remember. Perhaps it was watching a spectacular sunset, the warmth of the colors painting the sky, or the taste of a truly wonderful meal shared with friends, or the intoxicating feeling of falling in love. In the midst of that joy, was there not a tiny, quiet whisper in the back of the mind? A subtle knowing that this will end, the sun will set, the meal will be finished, the fiery passion will mature and change. The beautiful flower in the vase begins to wilt the moment it is cut. The peak of success inevitably gives way to a new set of challenges. This is viparinama dukkha. Our happiness is fragile precisely because it is dependent on conditions that are constantly changing. We cling to the pleasant feeling. We try to hold on to it. And in that very act of clinging, we create a tension, a fear of its loss. The happiness itself becomes a source of anxiety. It is the bittersweet truth that even our highest joys carry within them the seed of a future sorrow, the sorrow of their own passing. This leads us to the third and most profound level of dukkha, the one that operates continuously in the background of our lives. Even when nothing is overtly wrong and nothing pleasant is ending. This is sankhara dukkha, the all-pervasive unsatisfactoriness of conditioned existence. This is the bumpiest part of the ride on that cart with the misaligned wheel. It stems from the fundamental instability of who we are. What we call a self, a me, is not a solid, continuous entity. It is, from the Buddhist perspective, a temporary collection of constantly changing processes. Our physical body, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental formations, and our consciousness. These five aggregates are in constant flux. Our cells are dying and being replaced. Our feelings change from moment to moment. Our thoughts are a ceaseless, flowing river. There is no solid, unchanging CEO in the headquarters of our mind. We are more like a process than a thing, more like a wave than a particle. Sankhara dukkha is the subtle background tension that comes from this lack of a solid core. It is the feeling of inherent vulnerability, of being a temporary construction built on the shifting sands of time. It is the low-grade anxiety of knowing, deep down, that we are not fully in control. It is the reason why, even on a perfectly ordinary day with no particular pain or pleasure, we can still feel a sense of restlessness, a vague hunger for something more, a feeling that something is missing. This is the deepest layer of the illness, the fundamental vibration of dukkha that underlies all other experiences. There is a powerful story that encapsulates this journey of understanding. A young woman named Kisa Gotami was driven to madness by grief. Her only child had died, and refusing to accept it, she carried his small body from house to house, desperately seeking a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some mocked her, others pitied her, until finally, a wise man directed her to the Buddha. She laid her son at the Buddha's feet and pleaded for the miracle medicine. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "I can help you, but first, you must do one thing. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." Hopeful, Kisa Gotami rushed into the village. At the first house, a kind woman offered her a handful of seeds. But when asked if anyone in her family had ever died, the woman's face fell. "Oh, child," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many." At the next house, and the next, and the one after that, the story was the same. Every family had a story of loss: a husband, a parent, a sibling, a child. As the sun began to set, the profound truth of the Buddha's teaching dawned on her. Her own sharp, personal grief, her dukkha had not vanished, but it was now placed in a vast, universal context. She realized that loss was not a unique punishment inflicted upon her, but the shared, inescapable heritage of all beings. The entire world was subject to this law of change and impermanence. This deep seeing was the beginning of her healing. To look at dukkha, then, is not an act of pessimism. It is the ultimate act of courage and compassion for oneself. It is to stop running, to stop pretending, and to gently, honestly, acknowledge the true nature of our experience. It is the brave diagnosis of the master physician who says, "Here is the ailment. Now that we have seen it clearly, now that we have named it, we can begin to investigate its cause and, ultimately, find the path to its cure." We have looked at the symptom. The next step on our journey is to follow the physician's gaze deeper, to uncover the very root from which all this dukkha springs. Having looked with courage upon the symptom, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of dukkha, we now follow the master physician's gaze to its source. The second noble truth addresses the most vital question on the spiritual path. Why? Why do we experience this dukkha? Why is the mind so restless? Why is life so often a bumpy ride? The answer offered by the Buddha is both startlingly simple and profoundly liberating. The cause of our suffering is not found in the stars, nor in the actions of others, nor in the inherent flaws of the world. The cause is not an external agent punishing us for some past misdeed. The root of all our dissatisfaction, the Buddha declared, lies within our own minds. It is an internal force, a deep, driving energy he called tanha. The word tanha translates literally as thirst. It is a perfect metaphor. Think of the desperate, all-consuming feeling of intense thirst on a hot day. It commands your entire attention. It drives your actions. It colors your whole perception of the world. Nothing else matters but quenching that thirst. This is the energy of tanha. It is the relentless craving, the deep-seated wanting, the insatiable hunger of the mind that propels us through life, chasing after some things and desperately trying to flee from others. This thirst is the engine that keeps the monkey mind swinging, the force that constantly stirs the mud in the pond. This thirst, the Buddha explained, manifests in 3 primary forms, each one a different flavor of the same fundamental hunger. The first and most familiar form is kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving that is filtered through our 6 senses, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and in Buddhism, the mind itself is considered a sense organ that perceives thoughts and ideas. The eye craves beautiful sights. The ear craves pleasant sounds. The tongue craves delicious tastes. The body craves comfortable sensations. And the mind craves stimulating ideas and entertaining stories. We live in a world that is a grand marketplace, designed specifically to fuel this thirst. The endless scroll of social media feeds the eye and mind. The binge-worthy television series captures the ear and the imagination. The fast food industry is built entirely on satisfying the cravings of the tongue. This kamatana operates on a simple, deceptive principle that if we can just get enough pleasant experiences, we will finally be happy. But it is a profound trap. The satisfaction derived from any sense pleasure is, by its very nature, fleeting. The delicious taste of the food fades. The beautiful music ends. The exciting movie concludes. And the moment the pleasure subsides, the thirst returns, often stronger than before. It is like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. The momentary relief is quickly replaced by an even more intense craving, creating a cycle of dependence and perpetual dissatisfaction. We become ghosts at a banquet, forever tasting but never truly nourished. Beyond this thirst for fleeting pleasures lies a deeper, more pervasive craving, bhavatanya, the thirst to become. This is not just a craving for a thing or an experience, but a craving for an identity. It is the deep, desperate desire to solidify our sense of self, to be someone. This is the engine of so much of our ambition and striving. It is the voice that whispers, "When I get that promotion, then I will be a success. When I find the perfect partner, then my life will be complete. When I am seen by others as wise, or powerful, or beautiful, then I will be worthy." It is the relentless project of self-construction. We try to build a stable, impressive identity out of unstable materials, out of achievements, roles, relationships, and opinions. We crave existence. We crave significance. We crave to be a fixed and enduring noun in a world of transient verbs. This thirst fuels our anxieties about our reputation, our obsession with our public image, and our fear of being ordinary. It is an exhausting, endless task, because the very self we are trying to build is, as we have seen, an ever-changing process, not a solid entity. We are trying to build a permanent fortress on the surface of a flowing river. The shadow of this craving to become is the third form of thirst, vibhava tana, the thirst for non-existence or annihilation. If craving is the pulling towards, this is the violent pushing away. This is the energy of aversion, hatred, anger, and irritation. When we encounter a painful feeling, a difficult situation, or a person who threatens our sense of self, the mind's immediate, thirsty reaction is to want it to go away. We crave for it to not be. This can manifest as lashing out in anger at someone who has hurt us, hoping to annihilate their power over us. It can be the gnawing resentment we hold on to, trying to push away the memory of a past injustice. It is the irritation that flares up when traffic is slow or when things don't go our way, a desire to destroy the obstacle in its most extreme form. Vibhavatana can manifest as self-harm or suicidal thoughts, a desperate craving for the annihilation of a self that is perceived as the source of unbearable pain. It is the flip side of the coin of bhavatanha. One frantically tries to build a self. The other frantically tries to destroy an experience. Both are a form of profound resistance to the reality of the present moment. Both are a declaration of war on what is these three great thirsts for pleasure, for becoming, and for non-existence are themselves fueled by even deeper forces, known in the teachings as the three poisons, or the three fires. The thirst for pleasure and for becoming is rooted in lobha, greed. The thirst for annihilation is rooted in dosa, hatred or aversion. And fueling both of these, the fire that gives them life, is the most fundamental poison of all moha, delusion or ignorance. This is the core misperception of reality. It is the ignorance of impermanence that makes us cling to pleasure. It is the delusion of a solid, separate self that makes us crave to build an identity and fear its destruction. There is a simple, tragic image that captures this entire process. Picture a moth on a dark night, fluttering about. In the distance, it sees a light, a warm, beautiful, dancing candle flame. The moth's entire being is drawn to this light. It perceives it as the ultimate destination, the source of all that is good and desirable. This is kamatanha, the thirst for a pleasant experience, born of greed and ignorance of the flame's true nature. Driven by this irresistible thirst, the moth flies towards the flame. It does not question the impulse. It does not see the danger. It only sees the promise of light and warmth. It flies closer and closer, the heat growing more intense, until finally, with one last, fatalistic surge, it plunges into the fire and is instantly consumed. In its blind pursuit of what it perceived as pleasure, it found only its own destruction. We are that moth, and our unexamined cravings are that flame. Our constant thirst, our relentless leaning toward the pleasant and away from the unpleasant, is the very activity that burns us, the very cause of our dukkha. But this revelation, this second noble truth, is not a cause for despair. It is the most hopeful news imaginable. It tells us that our suffering is not random, not meaningless, and not inflicted upon us by an unjust world. It has a cause, and if there is a cause, there can be a cessation. The physician has not only identified the illness, dukkha, but has also found the precise pathogen that creates it, dunya. This knowledge is power. It shifts the entire dynamic from one of passive victimhood to one of active participation in our own healing. It means the solution is within our grasp. It points directly toward the next glorious discovery on our path. the possibility that this all-consuming thirst can be quenched, that these fires can be cooled, and that a state of profound and lasting peace is not just a dream, but an attainable reality. We have walked together into the heart of our own dis-ease. We have looked with unflinching honesty at the symptom, the pervasive, low-grade fever of dukkha that colors our lives. We have peered even deeper and identified the pathogen, the insatiable, burning thirst of tanha that fuels this fever. It is a sobering diagnosis. To see clearly how our own inner mechanics of craving and aversion perpetually create our own dissatisfaction can feel like a heavy burden. It might seem as though we are caught in a relentless, self-perpetuating cycle with no way out. But it is precisely here, at this point of stark realization, that the teaching performs its great and glorious pivot. It is here that the master physician, having laid bare the illness and its cause, leans in and delivers the most transformative news imaginable. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. It is the truth of cessation. It is the radical, life-altering promise that the fever can break, the thirst can be quenched, and suffering can have an end. When we hear the word for this ultimate goal, nirvana, or in its original Pali form, nibbana, our minds, conditioned by a lifetime of stories, may conjure up certain images. We might picture a celestial paradise, a lush garden with heavenly music, a perfect place we go to after we die as a reward for a good life. But to understand the profound liberation the Buddha was pointing to, we must gently set these images aside. Nibbana is not a place. It is not a destination. It is not an afterlife. It is a state of being, a state of mind, that is accessible to us in this very life. Here and now, the word itself provides the most powerful clue. It is composed of ni, meaning out, and fana, meaning to blow. Nibbana literally means to extinguish, or to blow out. What, then, is being extinguished? It is the three fires that we have just identified as the source of all our turmoil: the consuming fire of greed, the searing fire of hatred, and the smoldering, bewildering fire of delusion. Nibbana is not the attainment of a new and better place. It is the complete and final cooling of these fires within our own hearts and minds. It is the end of the compulsion, the end of the thirst, the end of the feverish struggle. It is peace, because this state is beyond our normal, conditioned experience. It can only be described through metaphor, like trying to describe the taste of a mango to someone who has only ever eaten salt. One classic metaphor is that of the far shore, our ordinary life in the cycle of suffering, known as samsara. Is this shore unstable, subject to the chaotic tides of fortune and misfortune? Battered by the storms of passion and fear, Nibbana is the far shore, a place of absolute safety, stability, and peace, beyond the reach of the tumultuous waves. The teachings of the path are the raft, skillfully constructed to carry us across the treacherous waters. Nibbana is also described as the unconditioned. Everything we know, everything we experience, is conditioned. It arises dependent on causes and conditions. Our happiness is conditioned by getting what we want. Our sadness is conditioned by loss. Our very bodies are conditioned by food, water, and air. Nibbana is the unconditioned, a state of peace that is not dependent on anything. It does not arise because of a cause. and therefore, it cannot be destroyed when conditions change. It is an unshakable peace, a freedom so absolute that it is untouched by the inevitable gains and losses of the world. It is the realization of that which was never born and therefore can never die. Perhaps the most direct metaphor returns us to the image of the sky. If our mind is the sky, and our thoughts and emotions are the passing clouds and storms, Nibbana is the final, unshakable realization that our true nature is, and always has been, the vast, open, boundless sky itself. It is not that the clouds cease to exist, it is that we are no longer identified with them. We no longer believe we are the storm. We rest in our own sky-like nature, allowing the weather of life to pass through without resistance, without being stained or diminished by it. The peace of Nibbana is not a blank, empty void. It is the vibrant, aware stillness of the sky, capable of holding everything. The Buddha's teaching on this was intensely practical. He was not interested in philosophical speculation or metaphysical debates about the nature of this ultimate reality. His focus was always on the immediate, urgent task of ending suffering. This is illustrated perfectly in the parable of the poisoned arrow. A man, the story goes, was shot by an arrow dipped in a deadly poison. His friends and family quickly found a surgeon to remove it, but the wounded man stopped them. "Wait," he insisted. "Before you take out this arrow, I must know the name of the man who shot me. To what clan did he belong? Was he tall or short? Dark or fair? What kind of wood was the arrow shaft made from? What type of bird provided the feathers for its fletching? What was the bowstring made of?" The Buddha asked his disciples, "What do you think? Would this man get the answers to all his questions before the poison spread through his body and he died?" The disciples agreed that he would surely die long before his curiosity was satisfied. The Buddha then explained, "So it is with my teaching. Life is like being shot with this poisoned arrow of dukkha. I do not teach about whether the universe is eternal or not, or whether the soul is the same as the body. I teach only this, the reality of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. Because knowing these things is what is essential. Knowing these things is what allows us to remove the arrow and heal the wound. This, then, is the power and the promise of the third noble truth. It is a radical declaration of hope. It tells us that we are not doomed to be puppets of our own cravings and aversions for the rest of our lives. We are not fated to endlessly wander in the cycle of dissatisfaction, the prison of our suffering, whose walls are built of greed, hatred, and ignorance. Has a door, the cycle can be broken, the fires can be extinguished. This is not a matter of blind faith or wishful thinking. It is presented as a discoverable reality, an achievable state, the natural result of walking a specific path. The fever of dukkha, caused by the pathogen of tanha, has a definitive cure, the cool, peaceful state of Nibbana. This liberating truth changes everything. It turns the journey from a hopeless struggle into a purposeful path. It provides a clear and shining destination, and it naturally gives rise to the final, most practical question of all. If there is indeed a cure, what is the medicine? If there is a far shore, what is the raft? If the arrow can be removed, what are the surgeon's instructions? This leads us directly to the fourth and final noble truth, the detailed prescription for our own liberation, the noble eightfold path. We have arrived at a place of profound hope. We have seen that the pervasive illness of dukkha, Our fundamental dissatisfaction with life is not a terminal condition. We have uncovered its cause, the burning thirst of tanha, and we have glimpsed the possibility of a complete cure, the cool, peaceful state of nibbana. The master physician has offered a diagnosis and a prognosis for full recovery, and now he unrolls the scroll upon which the detailed prescription is written. This is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, or Magga. This is the practical, tangible, how-to guide for the journey from suffering to freedom. It is not a set of dogmatic beliefs to be accepted on faith, nor a collection of rituals to be performed. It is a way of living, a comprehensive training of the heart and mind, known as the Noble Eightfold Path. Before we examine the 8 components of this path, it is essential to understand the principle that underpins its very structure, the principle of the middle way. The Buddha did not arrive at this teaching through abstract theory, but through lived experience. He had explored life's 2 great extremes. First, as a young prince, he was immersed in a world of absolute sensual indulgence, surrounded by every pleasure imaginable, shielded from every sight of pain. He discovered that this pursuit of pleasure, this constant gratification of the senses, did not lead to lasting happiness, but only to a subtle hollowness and a deeper thirst. Then, leaving his palace, he explored the other extreme, that of severe asceticism. For years, he engaged in extreme practices, tormenting his body, fasting to the point of starvation, holding his breath until he felt his head would explode. He discovered that this path of self-mortification also did not lead to wisdom. It only weakened the body and agitated the mind. Having exhausted both extremes, he realized that the path to liberation lay not in indulgence and not in denial, but in a balanced, intelligent, and sustainable middle way. The Noble Eightfold Path is the very embodiment of this profound discovery. It is a path of wakeful living, not of self-torture or self-gratification. To make this comprehensive path more understandable, it is traditionally organized into 3 interconnected trainings, each one supporting and deepening the others. The first is the training in ethical conduct, or sila. This forms the very foundation of the path and includes 3 factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Sila is about our engagement with the world. It is the practice of harmlessness, integrity, and kindness in our words or deeds and our work. It is about cleaning up our act. By cultivating ethical conduct, we create a life free from the inner turmoil of guilt, remorse, and regret. A mind that is not agitated by the memory of harmful actions is a mind that can become calm and clear. Sila prepares the soil, creating a nutrient-rich and stable ground for the deeper work of meditation to take root. The second training is in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the heart of meditative practice and includes 3 factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Once the outer world of our actions has been brought into harmony, we turn our attention inward to the cultivation of the mind itself. This is the work of taming the monkey mind, of training our attention to be steady, clear, and resilient. Through right effort, we generate the wholesome energy needed for the practice. Through right mindfulness, we learn to pay attention to the present moment without judgment. And through right concentration, we develop a mind that is unified, stable, and powerful. If sila is preparing the soil, samadhi is the deliberate act of planting the seed of awareness and watering it with consistent practice. The third and final training is in wisdom, or panya. This group includes the remaining two factors, right view and right intention. Wisdom is both the beginning of the path and its final culmination. It is the clear seeing, the profound understanding of the nature of reality that guides every other aspect of the training. Right view is the compass that ensures our efforts are pointed in the right direction, while right intention is the steering rudder that directs our energy towards liberation. It is this wisdom that ultimately cuts through the root of ignorance and delusion. If sila is the soil and samadhi is the cultivation, panya is the beautiful, fragrant flower of liberation that blossoms as a result of the practice. These three trainings are not separate, but work in a beautiful synergy. A clear mind samadhi is needed to see wisely panya, and a wise understanding motivates us to act ethically sila. Ethical action, in turn, calms the mind, allowing for deeper concentration and greater wisdom. Let us now briefly touch upon the 8 factors themselves. This complete design for an awakened life. The wisdom training includes right view, which is seeing the world and ourselves as they truly are, beginning with a clear understanding of these 4 noble truths. It is the correct map for the journey. This is followed by right intention, the conscious cultivation of thoughts and motives that are free from craving and ill will, orienting the heart towards kindness, compassion, and renunciation. The ethical conduct training begins with right speech, which means abstaining from lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and idle chatter, and instead cultivating speech that is truthful, harmonious, gentle, and meaningful. Next is right action, which involves refraining from harming living beings, from taking what is not given, and from sexual misconduct. It is the practice of compassionate and respectful living. This leads to right livelihood, which is the commitment to earning a living in a way that is honorable and does not bring harm to oneself or others. Finally, the mental discipline training starts with right effort, the joyful and persistent energy to prevent unwholesome states from arising, to overcome those that have arisen, to cultivate wholesome states, and to maintain them. This is followed by the central practice of right mindfulness, the capacity to remain aware, in a balanced and non-judgmental way, of what is happening in our own body, heart, and mind in the present moment. And this leads to the culmination of mental training. Right concentration, the ability to unify the mind and focus it on a single object, leading to states of profound calm, stability, and clarity. Imagine you need to cross a great, turbulent river, the river of suffering, to reach the far shore of peace. The Noble Eightfold Path is the sturdy raft that will carry you across. This raft is built from 8 strong logs, each log representing one of the path factors for the raft to be seaworthy. All 8 logs must be present, and they must be bound together tightly. A raft with only 7 logs will leak. A raft whose logs are not securely interconnected will fall apart in the first strong current. So it is with the path. These 8 factors are not a linear sequence of steps to be completed one after another. They are a holistic system, a set of skills and qualities to be developed simultaneously, each one supporting and strengthening all the others. This, then, is the map that has been unrolled before us. It is a complete, detailed, and time-tested guide for the greatest journey a human being can undertake, the journey from confusion to clarity, from bondage to freedom, from suffering to peace. It is the Buddha's compassionate and practical answer to the question, what must I do, with this overview of the entire path laid bare? We are now ready to take our first conscious step. We will begin by examining the guiding light, the compass for the entire journey, the factor that illuminates all the others, the cultivation of right view. Of all the 8 factors that constitute this path to freedom, we begin with right view. It is placed first, not because it is a step we must perfect before taking any others, but because it is the very compass for the entire journey. It is the North Star by which we navigate, the guiding light that illuminates the landscape ahead. Without right view, even our most sincere efforts can lead us astray. We can practice meditation for years with great diligence, but if our underlying view of reality is skewed, our practice will not lead to liberation. It would be like a ship's captain setting sail with tremendous skill and a powerful engine, but with a faulty compass. He will sail with great speed and purpose, but he will never reach the desired shore. Right view, or Samma Ditti in Bali, is this correct compass. It is the clear seeing, the correct understanding of the fundamental nature of existence that gives meaning, purpose, and direction to every other step we take. It is the map that prevents us from wandering aimlessly in the wilderness of our own confusion. The Buddha described 2 levels of right view, each essential in its own way. The first is what we might call a foundational or worldly right view. This is the understanding of the law of karma, or karma, as it is more commonly known. Now, the word karma is often misunderstood in the West. It is not a system of cosmic reward and punishment meted out by some divine judge. It is not fate, nor is it a predetermined destiny that we are powerless to change. Karma is a natural law, as impersonal and as reliable as gravity. The word itself simply means action, but more specifically, it refers to volitional action. It is the intention behind the act that is the seed of karma. The law of karma states that every intentional action we perform with our body, our speech, or our mind is a cause that will inevitably have a corresponding effect. Wholesome actions, born from intentions of generosity, kindness, and wisdom, will lead to experiences of happiness, peace, and well-being. Unwholesome actions, born from intentions of greed, hatred, and delusion, will lead to experiences of suffering, conflict, and pain. It is the universe's own self-regulating system of moral cause and effect. Understanding this is profoundly empowering. It means we are not helpless victims of circumstance. We are the architects of our own lives. The quality of our existence today has been shaped by our past actions, and more importantly, the actions we choose to perform right now, in this very moment, are shaping our future. This understanding provides a powerful incentive to live an ethical life, to cultivate the wholesomeness of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. It gives us a deep sense of personal responsibility and agency, moving us from a mindset of blame to one of creative power. This understanding of karma is the essential foundation, but the path then asks us to look even deeper, to cultivate an ultimate or supermundane right view. This is the direct, experiential insight into the true nature of all phenomena. This is not about believing in a concept. It is about seeing for oneself. The content of this right view is the clear seeing of what are known as the three marks of existence, the three universal characteristics stamped upon everything in the conditioned world. These are anicca, impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, non-self. First, we cultivate the view of anicca, or impermanence, on a surface level. We all know that things change, seasons shift, we grow older, relationships evolve, but the insight of anicca goes much deeper. It is the direct perception of the radical, moment-to-moment flux of all reality. It is watching, in our own meditative experience, how a physical sensation arises, shimmers for a moment, and vanishes. It is observing how a thought appears from nowhere, lingers briefly, and dissolves back into nothingness. It is seeing that our emotional states, our moods, our very consciousness are not static things, but a continuous, flickering stream of arising and ceasing. Life is not a series of snapshots, but a ceaseless, flowing river. When we truly see this, deeply and experientially, our tendency to cling begins to erode. How can you hold on to a river? How can you grasp a cloud? Seeing the inherent impermanence of all things is the beginning of letting go. From this deep seeing of impermanence, the true meaning of dukkha naturally follows, because all things are impermanent, transient, and in constant flux. Any attempt to find lasting, ultimate security and happiness in them is doomed to fail. It is inherently stressful and unsatisfactory. This is the dukkha we spoke of earlier. It's not that the world is bad or evil. A beautiful sunset is not bad. A loving relationship is not bad, but our attempt to cling to them, to make them permanent fixtures in our lives when their very nature is to change, is what causes our suffering. It is like trying to build a house on a frozen lake in the middle of winter. It might seem solid for a while, but spring is inevitably coming. Right view is seeing the ice for what it is and understanding the folly of trying to build a permanent home upon it. This leads to the pinnacle of right view, the most profound and liberating insight of all anatta, or non-self. Just as we examine the world outside and see its impermanent nature, we are now asked to turn this investigative lens inward. We look at this body, these feelings, these perceptions, these thoughts, this consciousness, this entire complex we call me, and we search for a central, unchanging, independent core. We search for the I who is in charge, the permanent owner of these experiences, and no matter how deeply we look, we cannot find one. What we find instead is the same flowing, interdependent process we see in the outer world. The body is a changing process of cells. Feelings are a fleeting flow of sensations. Thoughts are an endless stream of mental events. There is no solid, separate self at the center of it all. I am not a thing, but a process. I am not a noun, but a verb. This insight is the axe that strikes at the very root of our suffering. If there is no fixed self, who is there to be praised or blamed? Who is there to feel pride or shame? Whose reputation needs to be defended? Who is it that fears death? The entire edifice of the ego, with all its fears and desires, is built on this illusion of a solid self. When this illusion is seen through with the clarity of right view, the entire structure of suffering collapses. There is a famous Indian parable that perfectly illustrates the difference between wrong view and right view. A king once brought a magnificent elephant before a group of men who had been blind from birth. He asked them to touch the elephant and describe what it was. The first man touched its thick, sturdy leg and declared, "An elephant is like a great pillar." The second man grasped the writhing trunk and said, "No, you are wrong. An elephant is like a thick snake." The third man felt its broad, flapping ear and insisted, "You are both mistaken. An elephant is clearly like a large fan." Another touched the sharp tusk and said it was like a spear, while another felt the rough side and said it was like a wall. Soon, they were all shouting and arguing, each one absolutely convinced that their partial experience was the whole truth. Theirs was wrong view. A sighted person, one with right view, could stand back and see the entire elephant. They could see the leg, the trunk, the ear, the tusk, and the side, and understand how they all fit together to form the whole. This is the function of right view. It allows us to see the whole picture of reality, to see how karma, impermanence, suffering, and non-self are all interconnected parts of a single, coherent truth. Ending the inner argument and confusion, right view, therefore, is not a dogma to be blindly believed. It begins as a map, an intellectual acceptance of these principles, but through the practice of the entire path, especially meditation, it must become the territory itself, a direct, lived, and unshakable insight. It provides the crucial why behind every action we take on this path. It is the wisdom that steers our heart, and once our mind is oriented by this clear vision, the next essential step is to align our deepest motivations with this view, to consciously cultivate the aspirations that will propel us across the river to the far shore. This brings us to the next factor of the path, the cultivation of right intention. If right view is the compass that points our ship toward the far shore of Nibbana, then right intention is the firm, steady hand upon the ship's rudder. It is the active, volitional force that translates our understanding into direction. It is the conscious choice to steer our mental and emotional energy away from the rocky coastlines of greed and hatred, and toward the open ocean of freedom. Our minds are like great rivers, constantly flowing with thoughts, images, and impulses. For most of our lives, we are swept along by these currents, tossed about by habitual patterns of desire and aversion we barely notice. The practice of right intention, or samma sankappa, is the art of consciously choosing the direction of this inner river. It is the moment we decide to stop being a passive passenger and become the skillful navigator of our own mind, transforming it from a wild, untamed wilderness into a mindfully cultivated garden. The power of this practice lies in a simple but profound truth. Every single thing we do or say begins as an intention, a flicker of thought in the mind. A harsh word is born from a seed of anger. A generous act springs from a seed of kindness. A selfish deed originates in a seed of greed. The mind is the subtle, unseen precursor to all our manifest actions. To try and change our behavior, to force ourselves to be more patient or kind, without addressing the quality of the thoughts that precede these actions, is a difficult, often futile task. It is like trying to purify a river by building a dam downstream while pollutants are still being dumped into its source. Right intention is the practice of going upstream, It is the work of purifying the very headwaters of our consciousness, ensuring that the thoughts and motives flowing through our mind are clear, bright, and wholesome. When the source is pure, the river naturally runs clean. The Buddha taught that right intention has three distinct facets, three specific directions in which we must learn to steer our minds. The first of these is the intention of renunciation, or nekama. This word can sound severe, conjuring images of grim-faced ascetics, denying themselves all of life's joys. But this is a deep misunderstanding. Renunciation is not about depriving ourselves. It is about liberating ourselves. It is the wise and compassionate intention to let go of our clinging to things that we now see, through right view, are impermanent, unreliable, and ultimately a source of stress and suffering. It is a conscious turning away from the exhausting, never-ending cycle of sensual craving. Think of the constant thirst for the next hit of pleasure, the next episode of a show, the next purchase, the next like on social media. The intention of renunciation is the wisdom that recognizes this as a trap. It is the quiet, firm decision to seek a deeper, more stable, and more fulfilling form of well-being that doesn't depend on external stimulation. In practice, it is the simple choice to put the phone down and be fully present with a loved one. It is the strength to step back from a pointless argument instead of feeding the fire of your own ego. It is the joy of finding contentment in a simple walk in nature rather than in a crowded shopping mall. It is a fundamental shift in values, a deep yes to inner peace, and a gentle no. Thank you to the gilded cage of endless wanting. It is not an act of grim denial, but a joyful act of stepping into a lighter, simpler, and more spacious way of being. The second facet of right intention is the direct antidote to the poison of hatred, anger, and irritation. It is the intention of goodwill, or avyapada. This is more than just a passive absence of ill will. It is the active and deliberate cultivation of metta, or loving kindness. It is the warm, gentle, and unconditional wish for all beings to be happy and well. This practice begins with ourselves. When we notice the inner critic berating us, we intentionally replace it with a thought of goodwill. May I be kind to myself. May I be at peace. Then, we extend this intention outward. When someone irritates us in traffic, or when a memory of a past hurt arises, our habitual reaction is to tighten, to judge, to condemn. The practice of right intention is to notice this tightening and consciously replace it with a thought of softness and goodwill. May that person be well. May they find peace. This does not mean we condone harmful actions or become passive doormats. It is a recognition that holding on to anger and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It harms us first and foremost. The intention of goodwill is an act of profound self-protection. It protects our own heart from being corroded by the acid of hatred. It is the choice to cultivate a garden of warmth within ourselves, rather than a barren wasteland of bitterness. Every time we choose goodwill over ill will, we are steering our ship away from the storm clouds of conflict and toward the clear skies of connection and peace. The third facet of right intention flows naturally from the second. It is the intention of harmlessness, or avihimsa, which is the very heart of compassion, or karuna. While goodwill is the general wish for others to be happy, compassion is the specific intention to not cause harm, and where possible, to actively relieve the suffering of others. It is the heart's natural response to seeing dukkha in the world. This intention must first be applied inwardly. It is the commitment to stop doing violence to ourselves with relentless self-criticism, perfectionism, and judgment. We learn to treat our own pain and shortcomings with the same kindness and care we would offer to a dear friend. From this foundation of inner non-violence, the intention extends outward to all living things. It becomes the bedrock of our ethical life, the conscious decision to move through the world in a way that minimizes the harm we cause. It is the root of right action, which avoids physical harm, and the root of right speech, which avoids verbal harm. The intention of harmlessness is the recognition of our shared existence, the deep knowing that every being, just like us, wants to avoid pain and find peace. It transforms our relationship with the world from one of exploitation or indifference to one of kinship, care, and profound respect for life. There is a beautiful story, often attributed to the Cherokee people, that captures the essence of this practice. An elder is teaching his grandson about life. A great fight is going on inside me. He says, "It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, and resentment. The other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, kindness, and compassion." The grandson thinks about this for a minute and then asks his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old man replies simply, "The one you feed." The practice of right intention is precisely this, the conscious, deliberate, moment-by-moment choice of which wolf to feed. Our mind will habitually produce thoughts of all kinds, born from lifetimes of conditioning. We cannot always stop the first thought, the first arising of the evil wolf, but we always have a choice about the second thought. We have a choice whether to feed it with our attention, to indulge it, to let it grow stronger, or to recognize it and gently, deliberately, turn our attention to feeding the good wolf. By consciously cultivating the intentions of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness, we are nourishing the seeds of wisdom and compassion within us. We are tending the garden of our mind, and in doing so, we are ensuring that what grows there will be beautiful, beneficial, and will ultimately lead to our own freedom and the well-being of all. With our view corrected and our intentions aligned, the path now leads us out into the world to see how this inner cultivation manifests in our engagement with others, beginning with the most powerful and creative tool we possess, the power of our speech. With our inner world oriented by a clear view and guided by wholesome intentions, the path now moves from the realm of the mind into the tangible world of our daily interactions. The first and most powerful way our inner state manifests externally is through our words. Speech is the bridge between our private thoughts and our public reality. It is a tool of incredible power, capable of building connection or creating division, of healing deep wounds or inflicting them, of speaking profound truths or weaving tangled webs of deception. For most of us, it is also one of our most unconscious activities. Words tumble out, driven by habit, impulse, and fleeting emotional states. The practice of right speech, or samavata, is the conscious art of transforming this potent faculty from an automatic reaction into a mindful, compassionate, and deliberate action. It is how we ensure that the pure water flowing from the source of our intentions is not polluted on its way to the world. The Buddha, with his characteristic precision, outlined this practice in 4 key aspects, primarily by teaching us what to abstain from. By refraining from unwholesome speech, we naturally create the space for wholesome speech to arise. The first of these is the commitment to abstain from falsehood. This goes far beyond simply avoiding major lies. It is a deep commitment to living in alignment with what is true. This means refraining from exaggeration, meant to make our stories more impressive, from making promises we have no intention of keeping, from spreading misinformation because it confirms our biases, and even from so-called white lies told for the sake of convenience. Each time we speak untruthfully, we create a small fracture in our own integrity. We create a dissonance between the world as we know it to be and the world as we present it. This inner conflict requires constant energy to maintain. We must remember our lies, build upon them, and live in fear of being discovered. It erodes our own self-respect and the trust others place in us. The positive practice, then, is to cultivate speech that is truthful and reliable. It is to become a person whose word is their bond. When our inner reality and our outer expression are in harmony, the mind becomes calm, unified, and peaceful. There is nothing to hide, nothing to fear, and a profound sense of wholeness takes root. The second principle is to abstain from slanderous or divisive speech. This is the act of using words as a wedge to drive people apart. It is speaking ill of someone behind their back, carrying tales from one person to another to stir up conflict, and using rumors to damage another's reputation. This type of speech is a poison that seeps into the heart of families, friendships, and communities, destroying trust and creating factions. It is often motivated by the subtle poisons of jealousy or insecurity. By making someone else look bad, we hope to make ourselves look better. The antidote is to consciously cultivate speech that unites and promotes harmony. It is to find joy in speaking of the good qualities of others. When we hear of conflict, it is using our words to encourage understanding and empathy, to build bridges rather than walls. It is recognizing that our own happiness is deeply interconnected with the harmony of the community around us, and using our words as a tool to nurture that harmony. The third aspect of right speech is to abstain from harsh or abusive words. This is the most overtly violent form of speech. It includes insults, cursing, shouting, cruel sarcasm, and any language intended to belittle, humiliate, or cause pain to another. Harsh speech is the audible manifestation of the fire of aversion. When we use words as weapons, we are revealing the anger and hatred burning in our own hearts, and like any fire, it burns the one who wields it just as fiercely as the one it is aimed at. After an outburst of anger, after we have spewed hateful words, what is the feeling left inside us? It is almost always a toxic cocktail of adrenaline, agitation, and regret. We have poisoned ourselves in the act of trying to poison another. The positive cultivation here is the practice of gentle speech. It is choosing words that are kind, courteous, comforting, and respectful. Even when we must disagree or deliver difficult news, it is speaking to others from a place of loving kindness, remembering their inherent dignity and their desire to be happy, just like us. Gentle speech is a balm that soothes both the listener and the speaker, cooling the fires of anger and creating an atmosphere of safety and care. Finally, the fourth principle is to abstain from idle chatter. This is the frivolous, pointless, and gossipy talk that fills so much of our days. It is speech without purpose, used merely to fill silence, to distract ourselves from our own thoughts, or to engage in the low-grade drama of other people's lives. It is the verbal equivalent of the monkey mind, jumping from one trivial topic to another without direction. This kind of speech dissipates our mental energy, like a leaky faucet, slowly draining a reservoir. It cheapens the value of communication and adds to the constant background noise that prevents us from finding inner stillness. The corresponding practice is to cultivate speech that is meaningful, beneficial, and purposeful. This does not mean we must be somber and serious all the time. Joyful and light-hearted speech can be deeply meaningful, but it does mean that we become more conscious of why we are speaking. Is it to connect, to learn, to comfort, to clarify, to inspire? This practice also includes the profound skill of cultivating noble silence. It is learning to be comfortable in the quiet, to recognize that not every space needs to be filled with words. In this silence, we create the opportunity for something else to arise deep. Compassionate listening, which is the unspoken foundation of all right speech. There is a powerful ancient story that perfectly illustrates this teaching. A great king once summoned his royal chef and gave him a command: go to the market and find the very best thing to eat in all the world, and prepare it for my dinner. The chef went and returned, preparing a magnificent feast, centered around one dish, a beautifully cooked tongue. The king was delighted. The next day, he called the chef again. Today, he said, I want you to do the opposite. Go to the market and find the very worst thing to eat in all the world, and prepare that for me. The chef went and returned, and to the king's astonishment, he again served a tongue, this time tough and poorly prepared. The king was furious. How can the tongue be both the best and the worst thing in the world? He demanded. The chef bowed deeply and replied, Your Majesty, everything good in this world comes from the tongue when it speaks words of truth, kindness, encouragement, and wisdom. There is nothing better. But everything evil in this world also comes from the tongue when it speaks words of lies, slander, hatred, and cruelty. There is nothing worse. This is the choice that lies before us in every conversation. Our words are the tools with which we build our reality. Through the practice of right speech, we commit to using these tools with the skill and precision of a master artisan. We choose to build a world of truth, harmony, gentleness, and meaning, one sentence at a time. With our words now consciously aligned with the path, we turn our attention to the next way our inner life manifests in the world, through the work of our hands and the movements of our body. We move from right speech to the practice of right action. Having brought our words into the service of truth and kindness through the practice of right speech, we now turn our attention to the physical dimension of our existence. Our actions are our intentions made solid. They are the most direct and impactful way we interact with the world, leaving tangible footprints on the lives of others and shaping the physical reality around us. Right action, or samma kamanta, is the practice of ensuring that our deeds are a direct, physical expression of our compassionate heart and wise understanding. It is the commitment to move through the world as a force for healing and harmlessness. ensuring that our presence is a source of safety and peace, not one of fear or turmoil. It is where the rubber of our spiritual practice meets the road of everyday life. At its core, the practice of right action is traditionally defined by three fundamental precepts, three commitments to abstain from the most harmful physical actions. The first, and most foundational, is the commitment to abstain from taking life. In its most direct sense, this means refraining from the act of killing any living creature, from the smallest insect to a fellow human being. This precept is born from the deepest wellspring of compassion, the direct recognition that all beings, without exception, cherish their own life and wish to avoid pain and death. It is the ultimate expression of the intention of harmlessness, avihimsa, but the practice extends far beyond the literal act of killing. It is a call to cultivate a profound and active reverence for life in all its magnificent forms. It means examining our choices and refraining from supporting systems and industries that thrive on violence and destruction. It means being mindful of our impact on the natural world, recognizing that our planet is a living, breathing system that we are a part of, not apart from, in a more subtle, interpersonal sense. It means refraining from actions that kill the spirit of another through oppression, cruelty, bullying, or dismissiveness. The positive cultivation of this precept is not just about not harming, it is about actively protecting, nurturing, and celebrating life wherever we find it. The second pillar of right action is the commitment to abstain from taking what is not given. On the surface, this is a clear and simple precept against stealing. It is the practice of respecting the property of others and having the integrity not to take what has not been freely and willingly offered to us. Yet, its implications reach into nearly every corner of our modern lives. It calls on us to look at the more subtle forms of taking. This includes taking credit for work we did not do, exploiting the loopholes in a system for personal gain, wasting our employer's time, using pirated software or illegally downloaded media, or engaging in any business transaction that is less than honest. At its root, the impulse to take what is not given springs from the poison of greed, lobha, and a deep-seated belief in scarcity, a feeling that I do not have enough, and that I must grasp and take from others to be secure. The practice of right action is the antidote to this impoverished mindset. It is the conscious cultivation of contentment with what one has, and even more powerfully, the cultivation of generosity, or dana. It is discovering the profound joy that comes not from taking, but from giving. By committing to this precept, we shift our entire orientation from one of lack and grasping to one of trust, integrity, and open-handed abundance. We become a source of trust in a world that is often untrustworthy. The third precept is the commitment to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is a practice of bringing mindfulness, respect, and profound care into the most intimate area of our human relationships. At its most basic level, it means refraining from any sexual act that causes harm, such as adultery, assault, or any form of exploitation. It is about recognizing the immense vulnerability involved in intimacy and committing to never betraying that trust. In our modern context, this translates into a deep commitment to ethical sexuality. It means ensuring that consent is not merely a passive acquiescence, but is active, enthusiastic, and ongoing. It means being honest and transparent with our partners, and refraining from using another person's body or heart merely as a means for our own gratification, an object to satisfy our craving, our kamatarnya. The practice of right action in our sexuality asks us to treat our partners and ourselves with immense dignity. It is about fostering a connection that is built on mutual respect, kindness, and a genuine care for the well-being of the other person, transforming sexuality from a potential source of great suffering into a potential expression of deep love and connection. It is crucial to understand that right action, like all factors of this path, is not merely a list of don'ts. Abstaining from harmful deeds is the essential foundation, the clearing of the ground, but the higher practice is the active cultivation of doing good. It is not enough to simply not kill. The practice flowers into actively protecting the vulnerable. It is not enough to simply not steal. The practice blossoms into joyful generosity. It is not enough to simply avoid sexual harm. The practice matures into creating relationships built on deep love and respect. Right action is the conscious choice, in every moment, to be an agent of benefit in the world. The transformative power of this practice is beautifully illustrated in the story of Angulimala, whose name meant garland of fingers. He was a terrifying bandit who stalked the forests and murdered travelers, cutting off a finger from each victim to add to the gruesome necklace he wore. One day, the Buddha walked calmly into Angulimala's forest. Seeing him, Angulimala grabbed his sword and ran after him. But no matter how fast he ran, he could not catch up to the Buddha, who was walking at a normal pace. Exhausted, Angulimala screamed, "Stop, monk!" The Buddha, still walking, replied, "I have stopped." Angulimala, "It is you who have not stopped." The Buddha explained that he had stopped doing violence, stopped harming beings, while Angulimala was still trapped on the wheel of killing and cruelty. Stunned by the Buddha's fearlessness and profound words, Angulimala's hardened heart broke open. He threw down his sword, renounced his life of violence, and asked to become a monk. The path was not easy. When he later went for alms, people who recognized him threw stones and beat him, but he bore it with patience. His actions now completely transformed by compassion. The story of Angulimala is a testament to the fact that no one is beyond redemption. It is a powerful reminder that our past actions do not have to define our future, and that through a conscious and total commitment to right action, even the most violent being can become a source of profound peace. By practicing right action, we make our physical presence in the world a sanctuary. We create a circle of safety around ourselves, where other beings can feel secure and at ease. We bring our outward deeds into perfect harmony with our inward intentions, healing the split between what we believe and how we live. With our speech now kind and our actions now harmless, the foundation of our ethical life is strong. This raises a very practical question. How do we sustain ourselves? How do we engage in the world of work and commerce in a way that continues to support this path of peace? This brings us to the final crucial element in the training of ethical conduct, the practice of right livelihood. Having aligned our words with truth and our deeds with compassion, we arrive at the final pillar of ethical conduct, the practice that integrates our spiritual path with our daily survival in the world. For most of us, a vast portion of our waking life is dedicated to our work. If this significant part of our existence is in conflict with our deepest values, we are condemned to live a fractured life, a life where we are a different person at work than we are on our meditation cushion. Right livelihood or Samma Aiva, is the practice that heals this split. It is the art of engaging with the world of commerce and profession in a way that is honorable, harmless, and fully integrated with our journey towards awakening. It ensures that the very means by which we sustain our body does not poison our mind or harm the world around us. The Buddha, in his practical wisdom, laid a clear foundation for this practice by identifying 5 specific types of livelihood that are inherently unskillful and should be avoided by anyone serious about the path. These are professions that, by their very nature, cause harm and are rooted in the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. The first is dealing in weapons. To profit from the creation and sale of instruments designed for violence and death is to directly participate in the machinery of suffering and conflict. The second is dealing in living beings, which in the Buddha's time referred to the slave trade and the raising and transport of animals for slaughter. In our modern world, this extends to human trafficking, exploitative labor practice, and any commerce that treats living beings as mere commodities. The third is dealing in meat, which refers specifically to the profession of butchery or raising animals for the purpose of being killed. This is a direct contradiction to the precept of not taking life. The fourth is dealing in intoxicants, to make one's living by selling substances that cloud the mind, destroy mindfulness, and lead to heedless behavior is to profit from that which directly undermines the path. The fifth and final wrong livelihood is dealing in poisons, profiting from any substance whose primary purpose is to kill or to harm. The underlying principle connecting these 5 is clear. They all depend on and perpetuate the suffering of others. But in our complex, interconnected global economy, the spirit of right livelihood asks us to look much deeper than just these 5 categories. The principle of harmlessness must be our guide. We are invited to engage in a profound and honest inquiry into the nature of our work. We must ask ourselves, does my work, directly or indirectly, cause harm? Does the company I work for engage in practices that damage the environment, poisoning the air and water we all share? Does it rely on the exploitation of workers in faraway countries, people I will never meet, but whose suffering contributes to my salary? Does the product I sell or the service I provide depend on creating a sense of lack, envy, or addiction in the consumer? Does my industry, whether it be finance, marketing, or technology, have practices that prioritize profit over human well-being, that sow division, or that prey on the vulnerable? These can be uncomfortable questions, but they are essential. Right livelihood calls for a radical honesty about the consequences of our work. Furthermore, the principle of integrity is paramount. This connects directly to the precept of not taking what is not given. We must ask, does my work require me to be dishonest? Am I asked to misrepresent a product, to deceive a customer, to manipulate data, or to engage in unfair practices to get ahead? Right livelihood means choosing a profession where we can act with complete transparency, where our inner sense of integrity is not compromised for the sake of a paycheck. It is also a practice of the middle way, a job that is so all-consuming that it destroys our physical health, our mental well-being, and our relationships. Is not right livelihood. It is an extreme of striving that violates the principle of self-compassion. The goal is to find a balanced engagement with work that allows us to contribute to the world without being consumed by it. This inquiry is not meant to induce guilt, but to inspire mindfulness. It is a call to align our professional life with our deepest aspirations, And this is not only about avoiding harm, it is also about actively seeking to do good. The positive vision of right livelihood is to find work that feels like a meaningful contribution, the work that allows us to use our unique talents in the service of others. This could be in any number of fields: a teacher who inspires young minds, a doctor or nurse who heals the sick, an artist who creates beauty that uplifts the human spirit, a scientist working on sustainable solutions, an organic farmer who nurtures the soil. The possibilities are endless. Yet, right livelihood is not restricted to those in the helping professions. The path teaches that any honest work, no matter how humble, can become a profound spiritual practice when it is performed with the right attitude. Imagine a simple carpenter. He goes to his workshop each day. He selects his wood with care, respecting the life of the tree from which it came. With each measurement, he is precise. With each cut of the saw, he is fully focused. His attention does not wander to worries about the future or regrets about the past. His work is a meditation in action. He deals with his customers honestly, charges a fair price, and takes a quiet joy in creating something that is strong, useful, and beautiful. He is not a famous teacher or a celebrated artist, but his livelihood is perfectly right. He is practicing mindfulness with every hammer stroke, integrity with every transaction, and service with every finished piece. His workshop has become his place of practice, his tools, the instruments of his awakening. This is the ultimate potential of right livelihood. It is the transformation of work from a necessary burden into a path of practice. It is the understanding that we can cultivate mindfulness, patience, integrity, and generosity in the boardroom, the classroom, the kitchen, or the workshop, just as we can on the meditation cushion. With this practice, we complete the foundational training in Sila, or ethical conduct. We have brought our speech, our actions, and now our work into harmony with the path. We have created a life of external integrity, a life that is blameless, peaceful, and free from the agitation of remorse. This stable and virtuous foundation is the ideal ground upon which to build the next stage of our training. With the outer world now in order, we are ready to turn our full attention inward, to the direct cultivation of the mind itself. This requires a new kind of energy, a new kind of dedication. This brings us to the beginning of the training in mental discipline, the practice of right effort. Having laid the strong, stable foundation of an ethical life through the practice of right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we are now prepared for the journey inward. The outer world of our conduct is in harmony with the path, and the mind is relatively free from the coarse agitations of guilt and remorse. But a ship with a sound hull is not enough. It needs an engine to propel it across the ocean. This propelling force, this engine of the spiritual path, is the practice of right effort, or, in the Pali language, Samma Vayama. When we hear the word effort, we might imagine a kind of grim, white-knuckled striving, a joyless struggle against our own nature. But this is not the meaning here. Right effort is not about forcing or fighting the mind. It is a skillful, intelligent, and even joyful application of energy. It is the conscious and persistent cultivation of a wholesome momentum, the steady and unwavering will to move toward freedom. It is the heart's enthusiastic engagement in its own liberation. The practice of right effort can be understood as the art of becoming a wise and dedicated gardener of the mind. The Buddha, with his profound psychological insight, broke this practice down into 4 distinct, yet related, fields of cultivation. The first of these is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. The wise gardener does not simply wait for weeds to appear and then frantically try to pull them out. A primary part of their work is prevention. They protect their garden, perhaps by building a fence to keep out animals, or by carefully inspecting the soil to ensure no dormant weed seeds are present. In our practice, this is the art of guarding the sense doors. We know from experience that certain sights, sounds, conversations, and entertainments are like toxic seeds for the mind, exposing ourselves to gratuitous violence. Endlessly scrolling through social media feeds designed to provoke envy, or engaging in cynical gossip are all ways we sow the seeds of anger, craving, and anxiety in the soil of our minds. The effort of prevention is the wisdom to recognize these triggers and to mindfully, gently, limit our exposure to them. It is not about hiding from the world, but about consciously choosing what we consume with our senses, protecting our inner garden from unnecessary contamination, despite our best preventive measures. However, some weeds will inevitably sprout. This brings us to the second practice, the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. When the gardener sees a weed, they do not ignore it, allowing it to grow strong and scatter its seeds, nor do they attack it with rage, churning up the soil and damaging the surrounding plants. They approach it mindfully, get a firm but gentle grip, and skillfully uproot it. Similarly, when an unwholesome state like anger, jealousy, greed, or fear arises in our mind, we are taught not to suppress it, which only pushes it deeper into the unconscious, nor to indulge it, which gives it strength and allows it to control our actions. The practice is to first acknowledge its presence with mindfulness. There is anger. We meet it without judgment. Then, we can apply an antidote. We can reflect on the disadvantages of this state, how it robs us of our peace and clouds our judgment. We can deliberately cultivate its opposite, replacing a thought of resentment with a thought of loving kindness. We can investigate the feeling with curiosity, watching its impermanent nature until it dissolves on its own. This is the skillful effort of weeding the garden, gently but firmly removing what does not support our growth. Of course, a beautiful garden is not merely one that is free of weeds. It must be filled with beautiful and nourishing plants. This is the third great effort, the effort to arouse wholesome states that have not yet arisen. The gardener does not wait passively, hoping flowers will magically appear. They actively sow the seeds. In the same way, we can proactively cultivate the beautiful qualities of the mind. If we are feeling sluggish, uninspired, or emotionally flat, we can make the effort to arouse wholesome states. We can deliberately reflect on all that we have to be grateful for, kindling the warmth of appreciation. We can sit down to practice a formal loving-kindness meditation, actively planting the seeds of metta in our heart. We can read an inspiring book, listen to a Dharma talk, or call to mind the virtuous qualities of a respected teacher to arouse feelings of faith and inspiration. This is the joyful task of planting the seeds of compassion, wisdom, clarity, and peace in our inner garden. Finally, Once a beautiful flower has bloomed or a healthy vegetable has begun to grow, the gardener's work is not done. They must continue to care for it. This is the fourth practice, the effort to maintain and develop wholesome states that have already arisen. When a moment of genuine peace arises in our meditation, when a feeling of deep compassion fills our heart, or when a flash of liberating insight dawns in our mind, we don't just ignore it and move on. The practice of right effort is to recognize this precious state and nurture it. We give it our full, gentle attention. We savor it. We investigate the conditions that allowed it to arise, so we can create those conditions again. By cherishing and attending to these wholesome states, we strengthen their presence in our mind. We are, in a very real sense, carving new, more skillful neural pathways, making it easier and more natural for these states of peace and clarity to arise again in the future. We are tending the growth, ensuring our garden not only sprouts, but truly flourishes. It is vital to understand that this effort must be balanced. The Buddha once advised a monk named Sona, who was a former musician. Sona was practicing with such fierce, unrelenting intensity that he was making no progress and was on the verge of quitting. The Buddha asked him, "Sona, as a musician, what would happen if you tuned the strings of your lute too tightly? They would snap." Sona replied, "And if they were too loose, they would make no sound." Precisely, the Buddha said, so it is with spiritual practice. If your effort is too tense, it leads to restlessness and agitation. If it is too slack, it leads to dullness and laziness. You must tune your energy so that it is just right. Right effort is the art of tuning our instrument, finding the middle way between stressful striving and passive complacency. A familiar fable that perfectly captures this quality is that of the tortoise and the hare. The hare represents a kind of wrong effort. His energy is frantic, ego-driven, and inconsistent. He makes great leaps, but is easily distracted, overconfident, and quickly burns out. The tortoise embodies right effort. He is not flashy or fast. His energy is calm, steady, persistent, and unwavering. He keeps his goal in mind and takes one deliberate step after another. In the end, it is this patient, balanced, and continuous application of energy that wins the race. Right effort is the wise, joyful, and sustainable energy of the tortoise. With this practice, we become the active and joyful custodians of our inner world. We provide the energy, the momentum, and the skillful dedication that the path requires. But in order to be a skillful gardener, in order to know which plants are weeds and which are flowers, to know when to water and when to pull, we need to be able to see the garden clearly. We need a bright and steady light to illuminate what is happening in our minds from one moment to the next. This essential quality of clear, non-judgmental awareness is the very heart of the meditative path. It is the next factor. We must cultivate the practice of right mindfulness. With the engine of right effort, we have generated the wholesome, joyful energy needed to propel our practice forward. But energy without awareness is like a powerful ship sailing blindly into the night. To navigate the subtle inner landscapes of the mind, we need a brilliant, unwavering light. This light, the very heart of Buddhist meditation, is the practice of right mindfulness, or samma sati. It is the essential human capacity to pay attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. If right effort is the gardener's will to work, right mindfulness is the clear, bright sunlight that allows the gardener to see everything in the garden exactly as it is: the weeds, the flowers, the soil, the pests, the moisture, without distortion or preference. It is the simple, yet revolutionary, act of returning to our lives, of showing up for our own experience, just as it unfolds. The Buddha provided a complete and systematic framework for cultivating this awareness, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is not a complex philosophical system, but a practical guide to exploring the entirety of our lived experience, moment by moment. The first foundation, and the anchor for all the rest, is mindfulness of the body. The body is the perfect starting place for our practice because, unlike our thoughts, which are constantly wandering into the past and future, the body is always, unequivocally, in the present moment. The feeling of the air entering your nostrils is happening right now. The sensation of your feet on the floor is happening right now. The most common way to practice this is through mindfulness of breathing, or anapanasati. We simply rest our attention on the physical sensations of the breath as it flows in and out, not trying to change it or control it, but simply feeling it. When the mind wanders, as it inevitably will, we gently, without criticism, guide it back to the breath. The breath becomes our home base, our anchor in the swirling sea of thought. This practice extends beyond sitting meditation. It can be brought into walking by feeling the subtle dance of lifting, moving, and placing each foot. It can be brought into the simple act of drinking a cup of tea by feeling its warmth, smelling its aroma, and tasting its flavor. By grounding ourselves in the body, we come home to the present. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or vedana. Here, feeling refers not to complex emotions, but to the raw, immediate tone of any experience. Every moment of consciousness has a subtle flavor. It is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It is the ah of a pleasant sensation, the ouch of an unpleasant one, or the simple is of a neutral one. This feeling tone arises before our stories, judgments, and reactions. The practice is to observe this raw tone with bare attention. When a pleasant feeling arises, we note pleasant, without immediately clinging to it or demanding more. When an unpleasant feeling arises, we note unpleasant, without immediately resisting it or pushing it away. When a neutral feeling is present, we note neutral, without becoming bored or restless. This practice is incredibly powerful because it intercepts the process of suffering at its root. It is our unthinking reaction to feeling, our automatic clinging to the pleasant, and our automatic aversion to the unpleasant that creates the fires of tanha, our thirst and craving. By mindfully observing the feeling tone without reacting, we break this chain. We learn to let feelings arise, exist, and pass away without becoming their prisoner. The third foundation is mindfulness of mind, or citta. This is the practice of turning the light of awareness onto consciousness itself. It is recognizing the state or quality of the mind in any given moment. Is the mind currently experiencing greed? Is it contracted with anger? Is it scattered with restlessness? Is it calm and focused? Is it joyful? The practice is not to judge these states, but to simply know them. We learn to say to ourselves, "There is anger in the mind," rather than "I am angry." This simple shift in language reflects a profound shift in perspective. We are no longer identified with the passing mood. We are the spacious, knowing awareness that recognizes the mood. We become the sky, not the passing weather. This practice gives us an incredible emotional intelligence, allowing us to understand our own inner world with clarity and to stop being unconsciously driven by moods we don't even realize are present. The fourth and most comprehensive foundation is mindfulness of mental objects, or Dhamma. This is where mindfulness blossoms into penetrating wisdom. Here, we learn to look at our experience through the clarifying lenses of the Buddha's teachings. We begin to see the universal patterns at play in our own minds. For example, when we are meditating and find ourselves lost in a fantasy about the future, we can mindfully note, this is the arising of the hindrance of desire. When we feel sluggish and heavy, we can recognize this is the hindrance of sloth and torpor. Conversely, when our practice feels joyful and light, we can mindfully note, this is the presence of the awakening factor of joy. We are no longer seeing our experience as a random, chaotic mess of personal problems. We begin to see it as a lawful process, governed by cause and effect. As described in the Dharma, we see how the hindrances lead to suffering and how the factors of awakening lead to freedom. This is the direct, experiential seeing of right view, made possible by the steady light of mindfulness. There is a beautiful story that illustrates the essence of this practice. An acrobat master and his young apprentice had a balancing act they performed on a tall bamboo pole. One day, the master said to his assistant, "Now, listen, you watch over me, and I will watch over you. In this way, by protecting each other, we will perform our act safely and earn our living." But the young apprentice shook her head. "Dear master, that is not the right way to do it," she said wisely. "The arrangement should be this: I will watch over myself, and you will watch over yourself. By each of us protecting our own balance, we will be protecting the other. In that way, we will perform our act safely." The Buddha told this story and said, just as the apprentice said, so it is with the practice of mindfulness. By tending to our own present moment awareness, by taking responsibility for our own inner balance, we protect ourselves from falling into heedlessness, distraction, and harm. And in protecting ourselves, we naturally protect all those around us. A mindful person is a safe person to be around. Our presence becomes a gift of peace to the world. Right mindfulness, then, is the art of arriving fully in our own life. It is the miracle of presence. It is the unwavering light that illuminates the garden of the mind, so that our right effort can be applied with wisdom and precision. It is the foundation of self-knowledge and the beginning of true freedom. But this bright light of awareness, while illuminating, can still be diffuse, like sunlight on a cloudy day, to penetrate the deepest layers of our conditioning, to see reality with a clarity that uproots all suffering. This light needs to be gathered, focused, and unified. The art of steadying and unifying the mind is the next stage of our training. The final factor in the development of mental discipline, the practice of right concentration, with the bright, steady lantern of right mindfulness in hand. We have learned to illuminate the garden of our mind. We can now see with clarity the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that arise and pass away in each moment. We have developed the essential skill of knowing what is happening as it happens, but to see the deepest truths hidden in the soil of our experience, to penetrate the very roots of suffering. The light of our awareness must be more than just bright. It must be focused. It must be gathered from a diffuse, gentle glow into a single, powerful, unwavering beam. This is the practice of right concentration, or samadhi. It is the art of unifying the mind, of bringing all its scattered energies to a point of profound stillness and stability. It is the culmination of the training in mental discipline, forging the mind into an instrument of exceptional power and clarity. The relationship between mindfulness and concentration is intimate and synergistic. Like two wings of a single bird, mindfulness is the faculty that recognizes the object of meditation, for example, the breath, and notices when the mind has wandered away. Right effort is the energy that gently brings the mind back. Concentration is the quality of the mind that learns to stay with the breath, to rest upon it without wavering. Imagine you are trying to read a book while riding on a bumpy road. Each time a jolt throws your eyes off the line of text, your mindfulness notices the distraction, and your effort brings your gaze back to the page. This is the initial stage of practice, characterized by repeated noticing and returning. But if the road becomes perfectly smooth, the vehicle stops vibrating, and the air becomes still, something remarkable happens. Your eyes no longer need to be constantly brought back to the page. They can rest there, effortlessly, absorbing the meaning of the words with ease and clarity. This state of effortless, settled abiding is concentration. Mindfulness is the shepherd that guides the wandering sheep of the mind back to the flock. Concentration is the peaceful state of the flock, grazing contentedly together, unified and calm. The development of concentration is a natural process that unfolds through patient and persistent practice. Using the breath as our meditation object, we begin by simply applying mindfulness and effort, bringing our attention back to the sensation of breathing again and again. In the beginning, the mind is like a wild creature, restless and untamed. The moments of sustained attention are brief, but with gentle persistence, the mind gradually begins to settle. The periods of staying with the breath grow longer. The inner chatter begins to subside. As the mind calms, a sense of ease and even pleasure begins to arise. A feeling not born of external stimulus, but from the simple act of letting go of distraction. As our ability to rest with the object deepens, we may access profound states of absorption and bliss, known as the jhanas. These are states where the ordinary, discursive thinking mind temporarily falls completely silent. The sense of being a separate I who is doing the meditating fades into the background, replaced by a sense of unified presence. The mind and body can become flooded with powerful feelings of rapture, joy, and a deep, tranquille happiness, a happiness far more satisfying and profound than any worldly pleasure. It is crucial to understand that these blissful states are not the final goal of the path. They are, however, a vital part of the training. They provide a place of profound rest and rejuvenation for the mind. And more importantly, they prove to us that a source of deep well-being exists within, independent of the external world. A mind that has been bathed and nourished in the bliss of concentration emerges incredibly strong, supple, and fit for the most important work of all, the work of insight. The mind established in concentration is often compared to a deep mountain lake on a windless day. First, It is characterized by stillness. All the chaotic waves and turbulent currents of the monkey mind, the worries, the plans, the commentaries have ceased. The surface is as smooth as glass. Second, it is characterized by clarity. Because the water is perfectly still, the sediment has settled, and you can see right down to the very bottom. A concentrated mind is free from the distortions of craving and aversion, and can perceive reality with exceptional clarity. Finally, a concentrated mind possesses immense power, like sunlight focused through a magnifying glass, which can generate enough heat to start a fire. The focused energy of a concentrated mind has the power to penetrate through the most subtle layers of illusion and see the true nature of things. It has the stability to look directly at difficult truths like impermanence and non-self without being shaken or overwhelmed. It is here that the right concentration becomes so important. Concentration, as a raw skill, is neutral. A sniper waiting for a target possesses powerful concentration. A cat watching a mouse hole is deeply concentrated. But this is not the concentration of the Eightfold Path. Wrong concentration is focus without wisdom, directed toward a worldly or harmful end. Right concentration is a state that is developed in tandem with all the other path factors. It is guided by the wisdom of right view and fueled by the wholesome motives of right intention. It is steadied by the gentle persistence of right effort and illuminated by the clear awareness of right mindfulness. A beautiful metaphor for this is a lantern. The flame of the lantern is our awareness. In a windy, unprotected place, the flame flickers wildly, casting distorted, dancing shadows. Its light is weak, unstable, and unreliable. You cannot read a map or see the path ahead with such a light. This is the unconcentrated mind, tossed about by the winds of desire and aversion. Now, imagine taking that same lantern and placing it within a protective glass case. In a place sheltered from all wind, the flame becomes perfectly steady, upright, and brilliant. It ceases to flicker. It burns with a pure, unwavering radiance that illuminates everything around it with sharp, stable clarity. This is the mind established in right concentration. It is the mind made fit for the work of liberation. With the cultivation of right concentration, we complete the training in samadhi, or mental discipline. We have now transformed our mind from a wild, untamed creature into a magnificent and trustworthy instrument. It is calm, obedient, powerful, and lucid. The foundational work of the path is now largely complete. The instrument has been forged and sharpened. Now, we are finally ready to wield it. We are ready to turn this steady, powerful, and brilliantly illuminated mind upon the nature of our own experience, to perform the deep investigation that cuts through all delusion and sets us free. Our journey now leads us into the heart of wisdom, beginning with a direct and unflinching look at the first great mark of existence, the universal truth of impermanence. With the mind now gathered, sharpened, and bright through the practice of concentration, we are ready to use this magnificent instrument for its ultimate purpose, to see reality as it truly is. The steady, powerful beam of our attention is no longer a tool for mere calming, but a scalpel for profound investigation. We turn this light inward, upon the totality of our own experience. And the first universal characteristic that we examine is the truth of anicca, or impermanence. We have encountered this concept before as an intellectual idea, the simple truth that all things change. But the practice now is to move beyond the idea and into the direct, visceral, moment-to-moment experience of it. It is the difference between knowing that a river flows and actually stepping into the water to feel its ceaseless, powerful current against your skin. This is not a philosophical exercise. It is a deep, meditative inquiry into the very texture of existence. We can begin our investigation at the most obvious, gross level of impermanence. We see our own bodies change, aging from day to day, year to year. We watch the seasons transform the world around us. From the new life of spring to the dormancy of winter, we observe the relentless cycle of day and night. We see relationships begin, evolve, and sometimes end. We witness the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of stars. Seeing this macroscopic flow of change is a useful starting point. It helps us to intellectually accept that nothing is static. But the wisdom that truly liberates lies in seeing this process happening not just from year to year, but from moment to moment, in the most intimate and subtle workings of our own mind and body. With the calm and focused mind developed through concentration, we can now observe this subtle dance. We begin with the body, our ever-present anchor. We bring our attention to the breath, but now with a new intention. We are not just using it to calm the mind, we are using it as a field for investigation. Feel the very beginning of an in-breath. Notice how it arises, swells, and reaches a peak. Notice the brief, almost imperceptible pause that follows, and then feel the out-breath as it begins, flows outward, and finally dissolves into nothingness. Each single breath is a complete drama of birth, life, and death. It arises from nothing. It exists for a moment, and it passes away into nothing. It is a perfect miniature lesson in impermanence, repeated 20,000 times a day. We can then expand this awareness to the entire body. We might notice an itch arise on our arm. We observe its beginning. We feel it intensify. And if we just watch it without scratching, we will witness it fade and disappear all on its own. A feeling of warmth in the hands, a tension in the shoulder, a tingling in the feet, all are fleeting energy patterns, arising and ceasing in the vast field of awareness. We begin to realize that this body we think of as so solid and real is, in fact, nothing but a shimmering, vibrating, constantly changing process. We then turn this same investigative light upon our feelings, our Vedana. With a quiet mind, we can see with startling clarity how rapidly the feeling tone of our experience shifts. One moment, a pleasant feeling arises from a happy memory. We watch it appear, and before we can even grasp it, it is gone, replaced by a neutral feeling as we hear a distant sound. Then, a thought of a future worry appears, and an unpleasant feeling immediately follows. We see that our inner emotional landscape is in constant, tumultuous flux. Our feelings are like bubbles on the surface of boiling water, appearing and bursting in an instant. The practice is to watch this endless parade of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings without getting swept away. When we see, directly and repeatedly, just how fleeting and unreliable they are, the mind's habit of chasing pleasure and fleeing pain begins to seem absurd. Why invest so much energy in trying to hold onto a bubble the wisdom of impermanence begins to untie the knot of our reactivity. Next, we look at the mind itself, at the stream of our thoughts and moods. Here, the flow is even faster, even more chaotic. We watch as a thought appears, seemingly from nowhere, fully formed. It holds our attention for a few seconds, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes, replaced by another, and another, and another. We see that we are not the great author of these thoughts, carefully composing them one by one. We are more like the sky, witnessing an endless procession of mental clouds. A mood of joy can arise, and, in the space of a single breath, be replaced by a wave of sadness. We see that our mental states are not solid things, but transient weather patterns. This direct seeing is profoundly liberating. We stop taking our thoughts so personally, so seriously. They are not me or mine. They are just impersonal, fleeting events in the mind. So why is this constant meditation on change so central to the path? Why does this truth liberate? The first reason is that the deep, experiential seeing of impermanence directly severs the root of clinging. Our tenure. All of our suffering comes from trying to hold on to things that are, by their very nature, unholdable. We try to grasp pleasant feelings, positive self-images, and happy relationships, and freeze them in time. We try to build a permanent shelter on the constantly shifting ground of reality. It is an exhausting and doomed project. But when the mind has seen, 1,000 times over, that everything without exception arises and passes away, it begins to relax. It stops grasping. The frantic, clenched fist of the mind naturally begins to open. A sense of ease, acceptance, and non-attachment begins to pervade our being. Furthermore, the truth of impermanence, which might at first seem sad or nihilistic, is actually a message of profound hope. Because things are impermanent, change is always possible. A difficult emotional state is not a life sentence. It is a passing cloud. A challenging life situation will not last forever. A past mistake does not have to define our future. We are not stuck. Impermanence means that healing, growth, and transformation are possible. If reality were permanent and fixed, we would be eternally trapped in our current state of ignorance and suffering. The very fact that everything changes is what makes liberation itself possible. It is the open door to freedom. More than 2,000 years ago, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus had a similar insight. He famously said, "You cannot step into the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and you are not the same person." This piece of ancient wisdom perfectly captures the essence of anicca, the river of our experience, our body, our feelings. Our mind is in a state of constant, dynamic flow, and the self that we believe is observing this flow is itself part of the current. There is no fixed observer standing on the riverbank. There is only the flowing, the direct, experiential seeing of impermanence is the first great insight that arises from a concentrated mind. It is the sword of wisdom that makes the first, decisive cut, loosening the tight knots of our clinging and attachment. It revolutionizes our entire view of ourselves and the world. But this universal truth of constant change raises even deeper questions. If everything is so unstable, so fleeting, so unreliable, what does this mean for our search for happiness? And if everything, including our own mind and body, is just a selfless, flowing process, then who, or what, is this I that we have always taken for granted? This powerful insight into impermanence thus prepares the ground for an even deeper investigation into the remaining marks of existence, the nature of dukkha, and the ultimate, liberating truth of non-self. We have stood on the riverbank of our own experience and have seen, with the clear light of the concentrated mind, that the river is in constant flow. We have witnessed the truth of anicca, impermanence, in every corner of our being, in our breath, in our feelings, in our thoughts. This seeing loosens the grip of clinging and opens us to a more fluid and graceful way of living. But this profound insight relentlessly pushes us toward an even deeper, more radical question. If everything is an unstable, fleeting process, then who or what is the one experiencing it all? We turn the brilliant, steady beam of our awareness away from the objects of experience and onto the presumed subject, the very center of our universe, the sense of me. Here, we confront the deepest and most transformative teaching of the path, the truth of anatta, or non-self. Before we proceed, it is essential to understand what non-self is not. It is not a declaration that you do not exist, that you are nothing. It is not a nihilistic philosophy of annihilation. Rather, it is the correction of a profound case of mistaken identity. It is the insight that we do not exist as a separate, solid, continuous, and independent entity, a little I who is the permanent owner of our body and mind. The Buddha, approaching this question like a master scientist, did not engage in abstract speculation. Instead, he proposed a direct investigation. Let us look, he said, at what we call a person. Let us take it apart piece by piece and see if we can find this self that we hold so dear. This empirical analysis is structured around what are known as the 5 aggregates of clinging, the 5 components that make up our entire psychophysical being. The first is form. Our physical body. Is this body me or mine? We look and see that it is composed entirely of non-body elements, the food we have eaten, the water we have drunk, the air we have breathed, the DNA from our parents. It is in a state of constant, radical change, aging, getting sick, healing, decaying. Furthermore, it is not truly under our command. We cannot command it not to age, not to get sick, not to feel pain. It follows its own natural laws. Seeing this, we must conclude this body is a process, not a possession. It is not a self. The second aggregate is feeling, the raw sensations of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral that we have already observed. Are these feelings me? We see clearly that they are an impersonal and fleeting stream, arising dependent on contact between our senses and the world. A pleasant feeling arises when we taste something sweet. An unpleasant feeling arises when we touch a hot surface. They are not created by a central feeler inside us. They are simply natural reactions. They come and go with such rapidity that to build an identity upon them would be like trying to build a house on a bolt of lightning. So, we conclude feelings are a process, not a possession. They are not a self. The third aggregate is perception, the faculty of recognition and labeling. It is the mental function that identifies a collection of colors and shapes as a tree, or a certain sound as music. Are these perceptions me? We see that our perceptions are deeply conditioned by our past experiences or language, our culture, and our moods. Two people can look at the same event and perceive it in completely different ways. Our perceptions are not a pure, objective window onto reality. They are a conditioned, interpretive process. They are unstable and unreliable. Thus, we conclude perceptions are a process, not a possession. They are not a self. The fourth aggregate is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a broad category that includes all our volitional activities, our thoughts, ideas, opinions, beliefs, prejudices, desire, and intentions. This is often where we locate our sense of self most strongly. I am my thoughts. But as we have seen, thoughts are an endless, chaotic stream arising and ceasing in the mind. An opinion we hold dear today might be discarded tomorrow. A powerful desire that consumes us one moment can vanish in the next. These mental formations are conditioned responses, habitual patterns laid down over lifetimes. They are not the original, independent commands of a central CEO. They are echoes, not an original voice. We must conclude our mental formations are a process, not a possession. They are not a self. Finally, we come to the fifth and most subtle aggregate, consciousness itself, or vijnana. Surely, this awareness must be the real me. But when we look closely, we see that consciousness is not a single, monolithic entity. There is I consciousness, which arises when an I and a visible form come together. There is ear consciousness, which arises when an ear and a sound come together. There is mind consciousness, which arises when the mind and a thought come together. Consciousness does not exist in isolation. It is utterly dependent on an object and a sense organ. It is not a continuous, steady spotlight of awareness. It is a rapid, flickering series of discrete moments of knowing. It, too, is a conditioned, dependent process. And so, with this final insight, we conclude, even consciousness is not a self. Having taken apart the entire machine, piece by piece, we have searched everywhere and cannot find a driver. This is the heart of the teaching of anatta. The self is like a word we use to describe a process. The sage Nagasena explained this perfectly in a famous dialogue with King Milinda. Nagasena asked the king about his chariot. "Is the chariot the wheels?" he asked. "No," replied the king. "Is it the axle, the frame, the reins to each question?" The king replied, "No, venerable sir." Nagasena then declared, "Then I cannot see any chariot at all." The king explained that chariot is just a convenient name, a designation given to the collection of parts when they are assembled in a specific way. Nagasena smiled. "Exactly so, your majesty. Just as chariot is a designation for the assembled parts, so person, I, or Melinda, is a convenient designation for the temporary assembling of these five aggregates of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. In the ultimate sense, there is no permanent person to be found. This insight, which might initially seem terrifying, is the gateway to the most profound freedom imaginable. The illusion of a separate self is the root cause of all our fear, selfishness, and conflict. It is this small, isolated me that feels threatened, that needs to defend its territory, that fears its own annihilation. It is this separate self that feels lonely and cut off from the world. When this illusion dissolves, what is left is not nothingness. What is left is everything. We see that we are not separate from the universe, but a seamless expression of it. My body is the sun, the rain, and the earth. My thoughts are my ancestors, my teachers, and my culture. The hard, artificial boundary between self and other melts away. This is the end of loneliness. This is the birth of true compassion. How can we harm another when we see, in the deepest way, that the other is not separate from ourselves? This is the state of what some call interbeing. The wisdom of anatta is the final, decisive cut of the sword that severs the root of ignorance. It is the realization that frees us from the prison of the ego, when there is no separate self to protect and aggrandize. The fires of greed and hatred find no fuel on which to burn. The mind, liberated from the heavy burden of me and mine, becomes boundless, open, and radiantly peaceful. And this spacious, selfless heart becomes the perfect vessel for the cultivation of the most beautiful and expansive of human emotions, the boundless states of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. It is to these that our journey now turns, as we learn to express our newfound freedom through the practice of metta, or loving kindness, the profound, liberating insight into non-self. Anatta is like a controlled demolition of a prison. The sword of wisdom has cut through the illusory walls of a separate, isolated ego, and the structure has crumbled. What we are left with is not a desolate ruin, but a vast, open, boundless space, free from the constraints of me and mine. The great question that arises in this newfound freedom is this: with what shall we fill this space? The teachings of the Buddha provide a beautiful and luminous answer. In this open field of our being, we are invited to cultivate the 4 Brahma Viharas, or divine abodes. These are the sublime, boundless states of the heart that are the natural expression of a mind liberated from self-clinging. They are love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. We begin with the foundation of them all, the radiant sun of the heart, the practice of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is a love that is radically different from our usual conceptions of the word. It is not the possessive, transactional love of romance. It is not the preferential, biased love we have for our own family and friends. Metta is an unconditional, universal, and radiant goodwill. It is a simple, powerful, and unwavering wish for all beings, without exception, to be happy and well. It is like the light of the sun, which shines impartially on the beautiful flower and the humble weed, on the saint and the sinner, asking for nothing in return. It is the heart's natural state when it is no longer contracted around a fictitious self. The practice of cultivating metta is a gentle and systematic process of warming and opening the heart, of fanning this innate ember of kindness into a brilliant, steady flame. The formal practice, known as metta bhavana, begins in the one place we so often neglect with ourselves. It is a fundamental law of the heart that we cannot offer to others what we do not possess ourselves. To try and love others when we are filled with self-criticism and self-loathing is like trying to pour water from an empty cup. So, The first and most crucial step is to learn to be our own friend. Sitting quietly, you might place a hand over your heart, a simple gesture of warmth and self-acceptance. You then begin to silently offer yourself phrases of kindness. The traditional phrases are, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be safe," "May I live with ease." You can adapt these words to whatever resonates most deeply with you. The key is to repeat them gently, allowing the feeling behind the words to permeate your being. For many of us, this is the most difficult stage. The inner critic may arise with a dozen reasons why we are unworthy of such wishes. The practice is to simply notice that critic with mindfulness and, with gentle persistence, return to offering yourself this gift of kindness. You are learning to hold yourself with the same unconditional tenderness you would offer to a beloved child. Once a genuine feeling of warmth and self-acceptance has been established, even a small one, we then begin to extend it outward. The second stage is to bring to mind a respected benefactor or a cherished friend. This should be someone for whom our feelings of love and appreciation flow easily and without complication. We visualize this person clearly in our mind's eye, perhaps smiling at us. Then, we direct all the warmth we have cultivated toward them, using the same phrases, "May you be happy," "May you be healthy," "May you be safe," "May you live with ease." We feel our heart opening, freely offering this gift of goodwill, delighting in their imagined happiness and well-being. This stage helps the feeling of metta to gain momentum, to flow easily along a well-established channel of affection. The third stage begins to stretch the muscle of the heart. We bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone we see in our daily lives but have no strong feelings about one way or the other: the cashier at the grocery store, the person who delivers the mail, someone we see on our daily commute. We often move through our world surrounded by such neutral people, seeing them as mere background characters in the movie of our life. This practice aims to dissolve that indifference. We bring their face to mind and offer them the very same wishes. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. In this act, we are acknowledging their full humanity. We are recognizing that this person, just like us, has hopes and fears, joys and sorrows, and a deep desire to be happy. The barrier of separateness begins to melt, and we start to see a world of unique, precious individuals instead of a crowd of strangers. The fourth stage is the great test and the great purification of the heart. We now bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we experience conflict, friction, or resentment. It is wise to start with someone only mildly irritating, not the greatest villain of our life story. The goal here is immensely subtle and often misunderstood. It is not to force ourselves to like this person or to condone any harmful actions they may have committed. The primary purpose of this stage is to liberate our own heart from the prison of anger and hatred. We recognize that holding on to resentment is a poison that we drink ourselves. So, with as much sincerity as we can muster, we offer them the phrases of metta. We can even modify them to the best of my ability. I wish that you may be happy. May you be free from the anger and delusion that cause you to act in harmful ways. This is a profound act of courage. We are choosing our own peace over the bitter gratification of being right. We are wishing for our enemy to be happy. For a happy person is not one who causes suffering to others. Finally, having worked through these specific stages, we let our heart become boundless. In the fifth stage, we radiate metta in all directions. like an ever-expanding sphere of light. We extend it to all the people in the room, the building, the city. We extend it to all people in our country and all countries of the world. We extend it to all animals, all creatures in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. We extend it to all beings, seen and unseen, near and far, in all realms of existence. We hold the entire universe in our heart and bathe it in the simple, powerful wish. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings be safe and free from harm. Our individual heart merges with a universal heart, and we abide in a state of radiant, limitless goodwill. Do not mistake this gentle practice for weakness. Metta possesses a power that is far greater than that of anger or violence. This is shown in the story of the Buddha and the raging elephant. Nalagiri, the Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, in an attempt to assassinate him, arranged for the fierce royal elephant to be intoxicated and then released onto the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. As the elephant charged, trumpeting furiously, people screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's attendant, Ananda, tried to shield him with his own body, but the Buddha calmly told him to step aside. He then stood his ground, facing the charging beast, and radiated a powerful, concentrated field of pure loving kindness. The elephant, which could have been stopped by no physical force, was utterly subdued by this immense wave of gentle goodwill. It slowed, its trunk drooped, and it walked quietly to the Buddha and knelt before him. This story teaches us that love is the ultimate power in the universe, the only force capable of truly taming hatred and violence. The practice of metta is the art of filling the spaciousness created by wisdom with an unconditional warmth. It is the direct antidote to fear, anger, jealousy, and isolation. It is how we learn to inhabit our interconnectedness, not just as a concept, but as a felt reality. It is the sincere wish for all beings to find happiness. But what happens when we are confronted not just with the general wish for happiness, but with the raw, immediate reality of another's pain? Our heart's response to that specific situation calls for another, closely related quality. This is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, the boundless quality of compassion, or karuna, with our hearts warmed and opened by the radiant sun of metta, the unconditional wish for all beings to be happy. We are now prepared to cultivate its inseparable twin. If metta is the heart's response to the potential for happiness in all beings, then karuna, or compassion, is the heart's essential response when it encounters suffering. It is the quiver of the heart in the face of pain, the deep and unwavering wish for a being to be free from their dukkha, while loving kindness is a broad, radiant warmth. Compassion is a focused, tender, and powerful energy that moves towards suffering, not away from it. It is the embodiment of courage and the engine of altruism. It is vital, however, to distinguish true compassion from its paler and sometimes harmful counterfeits. Compassion is not pity. Pity creates distance. It looks down from a position of superiority upon a poor thing. Compassion closes the distance. It recognizes the shared humanity in the other's struggle and stands in solidarity with them. Pity says, "I am glad that is not me." Compassion says, "I understand this pain, for I too know what it is to suffer, Nor is compassion mere sentimentality or an emotional overflow. True compassion is always wedded to wisdom. It is not an idiot compassion that, in a misguided attempt to be nice, enable harmful behavior, or avoids difficult truths. Wise compassion has the courage to set firm boundaries, to say no when necessary, and to do what is truly beneficial in the long run. Even if it is painful in the short term, it is fierce and protective, not just soft and accommodating. This wise compassion is born directly from the insights we have cultivated on this path. When we see another person in pain, whether from sickness, grief, or anger, we see it through the lens of the first noble truth. We recognize their suffering as dukkha, the same fundamental unsatisfactoriness that we ourselves experience. It is not just their personal problem, it is a manifestation of the universal human condition. This depersonalizes the suffering and allows us to respond without being overwhelmed. Furthermore, our compassion is empowered by the insight into anatta, non-self, when the hard, artificial boundary between me and other begins to dissolve. We feel another's pain more directly, not as a threat, but as a part of our own interconnected existence. We understand that their well-being is not separate from our own. It is this combination of wisdom and interconnectedness that gives true compassion its stability and its strength. Like metta, compassion is a quality that can be deliberately cultivated through meditation. The practice often begins by bringing to mind a being whom we know is actively suffering. It could be a friend going through a difficult time, a family member who is ill, or even an animal we have seen in distress. We allow ourselves to gently open our heart to their reality, to touch their pain with our awareness, without becoming completely lost in it. We breathe in their suffering, not in a literal way, but as a symbolic act of acceptance and willingness to be present with their pain. Then, as we breathe out, we send them our heartfelt wish for relief. We silently repeat phrases from the heart. May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from this pain and sorrow. May you find peace and healing. We allow our heart to become a space of gentle, loving presence for their struggle. The practice then expands. We turn this same compassionate awareness toward ourselves. We all carry our own burdens of pain, regret, and fear. The practice of self-compassion is to acknowledge our own dukkha with the same tenderness we would offer a dear friend. We breathe in our own pain and breathe out a wish for our own freedom and peace. We stop treating ourselves with harshness and criticism, and instead learn to hold our own struggles in the gentle embrace of compassion. From here, the circle widens. We bring to mind our loved ones, then neutral people, and then, most challenging of all, or difficult people, we reflect that their harmful actions are themselves born from their own deep suffering, their own ignorance and pain. We extend the wish that they too may be free from the suffering that drives them. Ultimately, compassion is not a passive feeling of empathy. It is a powerful motivation for action. When we truly allow our hearts to tremble in the face of suffering, we are naturally moved to do whatever we can to help alleviate it. This is the great ideal embodied in the figure of the Bodhisattva of compassion, known in many traditions as Avalokiteshvara, or as Quan Thế Âm in Vietnam. This enlightened being is often depicted with 1,000 eyes, to see all the cries and suffering in every corner of the universe, and with 1,000 hands, each holding a different instrument, to offer skillful and appropriate help in every conceivable situation. This is not a deity to be worshipped as separate from ourselves, but a profound symbol of our own potential. It represents the full blossoming of compassion and all-seeing, omniscient awareness of suffering, coupled with a boundless, courageous, and skillful capacity to respond. It is the marriage of perfect wisdom and perfect compassion, working together for the liberation of all. The practice of karuna, therefore, is the practice of training our heart to stay open in the face of pain. It is the antidote to the poisons of fear, aversion, and indifference. Fear makes us shut down and run away from suffering. Aversion makes us push it away with anger. Indifference makes us pretend it doesn't exist. Compassion allows us to move towards suffering with a wise and steady heart, offering our presence and our help with loving kindness. Or metta, we learn to connect with the happiness and potential in all beings. With compassion, or karuna, we learn to connect with the suffering in all beings. We have now addressed the two great poles of existence, but what of the vast territory in between? What is our response when we see good fortune come to others? Our habitual mind can sometimes react with the subtle poison of jealousy. The direct antidote to this is the next divine abode, the practice of cultivating joy in the joy of others. The radiant quality of mudita. We have opened our hearts with metta, the radiant wish for all to be happy. We have learned to meet suffering with karuna, the trembling and courageous heart of compassion. Now we arrive at the third of the four divine abodhis, a quality that can be one of the most challenging to our conditioned minds, and yet one of the most liberating. This is the practice of mudita, which can be translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the genuine, wholehearted, unselfish delight in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. If compassion is the heart's ability to weep with those who weep, mudita is the heart's ability to dance with those who dance. It is the direct and powerful antidote to the corrosive inner poisons of jealousy and envy. In a world that often conditions us to compete, to compare, and to measure our own worth against the achievements of others, mudita can feel like a rare and precious jewel. It is one thing to feel compassion for someone who is suffering. Our own relative good fortune can make us feel generous. It is quite another thing to feel pure, unadulterated joy when a colleague receives the promotion we wanted, when a friend achieves a level of success that has eluded us, or when we see someone who seems to have the perfect life we covet. In these moments, the habitual mind often reacts not with joy, but with the bitter pang of envy. A voice whispers, "Why them, and not me?" This reaction stems from a deep-seated illusion, the illusion of scarcity. It is the unconscious belief that happiness, success, and love are limited resources, like pieces of a pie. If someone else gets a large slice, there is less left for us. This scarcity mindset turns life into a grim blend, zero-sum competition, trapping us in a state of constant striving and comparison. Envy is a painful, contracting emotion. It isolates us from others and secretly makes us wish for their failure, which is a truly miserable way to live. Mudita is the practice that shatters this illusion, the practice of cultivating sympathetic joy, like the other heart practices, is a gradual training of the mind. We begin where it is easiest. First, bring to mind a person you love dearly, a close friend or a family member. Now, reflect on a specific moment of their success or happiness. Perhaps they graduated from school, recovered from an illness, had a child, or simply experienced a moment of pure, simple joy. As you hold this image and memory in your mind, allow yourself to feel their happiness. Let their smile become your smile. Let their delight warm your own heart. Then, you can silently offer them phrases of appreciative joy. I am so happy for you. I rejoice in your good fortune. May your happiness and success continue. May your joy increase. In this stage, we are simply learning to recognize and connect with the joy that naturally flows from a loving connection. Next, we extend this practice to a neutral person. Think of someone you see in your daily life but do not know well. Now, imagine something good happening to them. Perhaps they receive some wonderful news, or they are laughing heartily with a friend, or they are simply enjoying a beautiful, sunny day. Instead of passing over this moment with indifference, you consciously tune into their happiness. You offer a silent thought, how wonderful for you. I am happy that you are happy. This simple act trains the mind to notice and appreciate the countless moments of joy that are constantly unfolding all around us. Moments we usually ignore. The world begins to seem like a much happier place because we are actively looking for and connecting with its joy. The great challenge, of course, is to extend this sympathetic joy to someone we perceive as a rival or whose success has triggered our own envy. This must be approached with great gentleness and honesty. We begin by mindfully acknowledging the feeling of envy within us, without judging ourselves for it. There is a feeling of envy present. We accept it as a conditioned human emotion. Then, we try to gently shift our perspective. We can reflect on the hard work and dedication that person may have put into their achievement. We can reflect that the universe is abundant, and their success does not take anything away from our own potential. Then, we can try, even just a little, to offer them a genuine wish of joy. You have worked hard for this. I rejoice in your accomplishment. May you enjoy the fruits of your effort. This is a profoundly transformative act. Each time we choose mudita over envy, we weaken the root of our own suffering and strengthen the root of our own joy. We are freeing ourselves from the self-imposed prison of comparison. Finally, we can expand our sympathetic joy to be boundless. We can reflect on the countless beings throughout the world who are, at this very moment, experiencing happiness. A baby taking its first steps, a student receiving a diploma, an artist completing a masterpiece, a couple falling in love, a family sharing a meal, an act of kindness being performed. We open our hearts to this vast, global ocean of joy and let ourselves be uplifted by it. Mudita teaches us that joy is not a limited resource. It is infinite. By learning to rejoice in the happiness of others, we gain access to an endless supply of it. Our own happiness is no longer limited to the infrequent moments of our own personal success. Our happiness can be as vast as the universe itself. The most perfect and relatable illustration of mudita is the joy a loving parent feels for their child. When a parent sees their child succeed, graduate, get married, or achieve a dream, do they feel that the child's happiness has diminished their own? Of course not. The parent's heart swells with a joy that is often even greater than what the child is feeling. The parent's happiness is multiplied by their child's happiness. There is no sense of competition, no feeling of scarcity. There is only a shared, boundless delight. This is the heart of mudita. The wisdom of non-self teaches us that, in a deep way, we are all interconnected like a family. Another's success is our success. Another's joy is our joy. The practice of mudita is the radical act of choosing celebration over comparison. It frees us from the exhausting treadmill of envy and fills our own mind with light and gladness. It is the generous, expansive heart that finds delight everywhere. With metta, we have cultivated love for all. With karuna, we have cultivated compassion for all. And now with mudita, we have cultivated joy for all. Our heart is now open, empathetic, and vast. But in this world of constant change, of good fortune and bad, of happiness and sorrow, of praise and blame, how do we keep this wide open heart from being constantly thrown off balance? How do we love, grieve, and rejoice with all beings, yet remain steady and unshaken ourselves? This requires the fourth and final divine abode, the great stabilizing force that balances all the others, the profound peace of upekkha, or equanimity. We have journeyed through the sublime landscapes of the heart, cultivating the boundless warmth of loving kindness, the courageous tenderness of compassion, and the generous delight of sympathetic joy. Our heart is now open, engaged, and deeply connected to the world. We have learned to rejoice in the light and to stand with courage in the darkness. Yet, in this very openness lies a great challenge. An unprotected heart, when exposed to the relentless waves of the world's joys and sorrows, can easily be overwhelmed. Our love can turn to anxious attachment. Our compassion can collapse into despair, and our joy can become a manic grasping. To prevent this, to allow our hearts to be both radically open and profoundly stable, we must cultivate the fourth and final divine abode. This is the crowning jewel of the heart practices, the great stabilizer and equalizer, the serene and unshakable peace of upekkha, or equanimity. It is crucial to understand from the outset what equanimity is not its greatest enemy, the quality that looks similar but is its polar opposite, is indifference. Indifference is born from fear and ignorance. It is a defense mechanism, a shutting down of the heart to avoid being hurt. Indifference says, "I don't care," and turns away. It is a cold, sterile, and disconnected state. Equanimity, on the other hand, is born from wisdom and immense love. It is the state of a heart that is so open and so vast that it can hold the entirety of life's experiences without being thrown off balance. Equanimity does not say, "I don't care." It says, "I care so deeply that I will not allow my own reactive preferences to get in the way of wise and compassionate action." Indifference is a frozen pond, hard and unfeeling. Equanimity is the vast, deep ocean, which can receive 1,000 rivers of joy and 1,000 rivers of sorrow without its own immense, quiet nature being disturbed. This profound state of balance is not a feeling we simply conjure up. It is the natural result of deep seeing. It is a peace that is rooted in the wisdom we have cultivated throughout this path. Firstly, equanimity is grounded in a deep, experiential understanding of impermanence, or anicca. The equanimous mind has seen, again and again, that all states are temporary. It knows that pleasure and pain, success and failure, are all fleeting phenomena, like patterns of weather passing through the sky. because it knows that happiness will not last forever. It does not cling desperately to it, and because it knows that sorrow will not last forever, it does not fall into despair. It meets every experience with a quiet, knowing whisper: this too shall pass. This insight prevents the mind from being carried away by the temporary highs and lows of life. Secondly, equanimity is rooted in a deep understanding of the law of karma. The equanimous mind recognizes that all beings are the owners of their own actions and the heirs of their own deeds. We can love, guide, support, and offer our help, but we cannot ultimately control the choices and karmic trajectories of others. We cannot walk their path for them. This understanding frees us from the terrible burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. It allows our love and compassion to be pure and unconditional, offered freely, without being attached to a specific outcome. We do our best to help, and then we let go, trusting in the natural laws of cause and effect, finding peace in the wisdom of knowing what is our responsibility and what is not. The formal practice of cultivating equanimity often involves reflecting on what are known as the 8 worldly winds. These are the 8 conditions that constantly blow through our lives, pushing and pulling the untrained mind in every direction. They come in 4 pairs of opposites: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. An ordinary mind is like a leaf caught in these winds, soaring high on the updraft of praise and fame, only to be dashed to the ground by the downdraft of blame and loss. There is no peace, only a constant, reactive dance to the tune of external circumstances. The practice of equanimity is to become like a great, ancient mountain in the midst of these winds. Storms may rage, winds may howl, and rain may lash down. But does the mountain tremble? Does it get angry at the wind or sad about the rain? No. The mountain remains utterly still, silent, and grounded, allowing the weather to come and go without being disturbed by it. In our practice, we learn to observe these worldly winds as they blow through our own lives. When we receive praise, we mindfully note the pleasant feeling without allowing it to swell into arrogance. When we are blamed, we mindfully note the painful feeling without collapsing into defensiveness or despair. We see them all as impersonal, impermanent phenomena, just wind blowing past the unshakable mountain of our awareness. Upekkha is what perfects and balances the other 3 divine abodes. It is the spacious container that holds them all. It protects metta, or loving kindness, from devolving into selfish attachment or grief. When the object of our love experiences pain, it protects karuna, our compassion, from becoming overwhelming sorrow or burnout, allowing us to face great suffering with a steady and resilient heart. It protects mudita, our sympathetic joy, from turning into giddy excitement or attachment to another's success. Equanimity is the calm center in the midst of the hurricane of life, the quiet axis around which the wheel of love, compassion, and joy can gracefully turn. With the cultivation of equanimity, we have found our true center. It is not a center built of ego and preference, but a center of profound peace that comes from seeing things clearly and accepting them as they are. It is the quiet strength of a mind that is no longer at war with reality. We have now journeyed through the entirety of the ethical training that grounds our life in the world, the mental training that forges our mind into a tool of clarity and power, and the heart training that opens us to the boundless qualities of our true nature. We have gathered all the threads, all the skills, all the insights of this noble path. The final task is not to learn something new, but to weave all these threads together into a single, seamless tapestry. It is to take this profound practice off the meditation cushion and integrate it into every moment of our waking life, finding liberation not in some distant goal, but in the very next breath we take. This is the art of living an awakened life. We have journeyed far. We began by acknowledging the subtle, pervasive noise of the unquiet mind. We looked with courage into the face of our own dissatisfaction, our dukkha, and we identified its cause as the insatiable thirst of tanha. We then discovered the most hopeful of all truths, that this suffering can end, that a state of profound peace called nibbana is possible. With this hope as our guide, we have walked the entirety of the Noble Eightfold Path. We built a foundation of sila, bringing our speech, actions, and work into harmony with our heart. We trained the mind through samadhi, cultivating the energy, mindfulness, and concentration needed to see clearly. And we opened our hearts and minds to the liberating insights of panya, or wisdom, understanding the nature of reality and cultivating the boundless states of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. We now stand here, holding all the beautiful and powerful threads of this path. The final practice is not to learn a new technique, but to learn how to weave these threads together into a single, seamless garment that we can wear in every moment of our lives. This is the art of living an awakened life. The great misunderstanding is that our practice is something we do only when we are sitting on a meditation cushion in a quiet room. The true purpose of that formal practice is to train our minds, to develop the skills of awareness and compassion so that we can take them with us into the messy, unpredictable, and often challenging laboratory of our daily life. The distinction between meditation time and the rest of life begins to dissolve. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice. The morning traffic jam is no longer just a source of frustration. It is a meditation hall on wheels. It is an opportunity to notice the arising of impatience, to feel the tension in the body, and to consciously return to the anchor of the breath. It is a chance to practice metta for the other drivers, recognizing they too are just trying to get somewhere. Your workplace becomes your monastery. A difficult meeting is a chance to practice deep listening and right speech, to express your views without aggression, and to listen to others without judgment. The pressure of a deadline is an opportunity to observe the arising of anxiety and to meet it with the calm stability of a mind that knows this, too, shall pass. The simple act of eating lunch becomes a practice of mindful eating. Instead of mindlessly scrolling through your phone, you pay attention to the food. You see its colors and textures. You smell its aroma. You taste each bite, fully present for the nourishment it provides. You reflect with gratitude on the sun, the rain, the soil, and the countless people whose labor brought this food to your plate. In these simple, ordinary acts, we are practicing, we are being present, we are living deeply. This alchemical approach transforms our entire relationship with life's difficulties. The challenges we once saw as obstacles to our peace are now reframed as the very opportunities we need to deepen our practice. A conflict with a loved one becomes a powerful workshop for compassion. It is a chance to see our own reactivity, to practice speaking with kindness, even when we feel hurt, and to try and understand the suffering that is driving the other person's actions. A moment of great loss or grief, while painful, becomes a profound, visceral lesson in impermanence. It is an opportunity to hold our own aching heart with the boundless tenderness of karuna, and to touch the truth that love is more powerful than death. The arising of envy, when a friend succeeds, is no longer a source of shame, but a clear bell ringing, inviting us to practice mudita, to consciously rejoice in their happiness and free our own heart from the prison of comparison. Every irritation, every disappointment, every moment of fear becomes a sacred invitation to wake up, to apply the tools we have cultivated, and to find our freedom right in the heart of the difficulty. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh was once asked by a student how to practice mindfulness while doing household chores. The master's reply was simple and profound. He said that while you are washing the dishes, you should only be washing the dishes. If you are thinking about the cup of tea you will enjoy afterwards, or the dessert you will eat, then you are not truly alive during the time you are washing the dishes. You are rushing through the present moment, trying to get to a better future that never arrives. He said the miracle is not to walk on water, but to walk on the earth, to be fully present for our life. The practice is to be able to wash the dishes in such a way that the act of washing them is a joy, a reality, a meditation. I am washing these dishes to wash the dishes, he would say, not just to have clean dishes. This simple teaching contains the entire path to be fully present for the mundane, for the ordinary, for the simple act in front of us. This is where liberation is found. And so, we bring our journey full circle, back to the simplest and most profound anchor of all, the breath. The ultimate truth of this path is that nirvana is not a distant place or a future attainment. It is as close as our own breath. The breath is our constant companion, our refuge, our home base. In any moment of our day, no matter how chaotic or overwhelming, we can return to it. When we are lost in thought, we can come back to the feeling of the in-breath. When we are caught in a storm of emotion, we can anchor ourselves in the sensation of the out-breath. Each breath is an opportunity to let go of the past and the future, and to arrive fully in the present. Each conscious breath is a moment of mindfulness. Each gentle return to the breath is an act of right effort. Each peaceful exhalation is a moment of release, of renunciation. The entire path, in its magnificent entirety, can be found in the space of a single, conscious breath. This is the art of living an awakened life. It is the discovery that our freedom is not something to be achieved, but something to be returned to, again and again, in every moment, with every breath we take. We began this journey together in a place that is intimately familiar to us all, the restless, noisy, and often overwhelming landscape of the unquiet mind. We listened to its endless chatter, and we felt the subtle, pervasive dissatisfaction that it creates. With courage, we followed the path of the Buddha as a master physician, first diagnosing the universal symptom of our unease, dukkha, and then uncovering its root cause within our own hearts, the burning thirst of craving and clinging known as tanha. But we did not linger in the diagnosis. We discovered the most hopeful of all truths, that this condition has a cure, and that a path to healing exists. Together, we have walked this noble eightfold path. Step by step, we built a foundation of ethical living, bringing our words, actions, and work into harmony with our deepest values. We learn to tame the wild energy of the mind, cultivating the focus, clarity, and stillness of a skilled meditator. And with this clear and steady mind, we turned our gaze inward, seeing for ourselves the liberating truths of impermanence and non-self, allowing the walls of the ego to dissolve and the boundless heart of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity to shine forth. It has been a journey from the complexity of our confusion to the simplicity of clear seeing. If there is one essential message to take from this entire journey, it is this: peace is not an external destination you must strive to reach, but an internal quality of awareness that you can learn to return to. This path is not about becoming someone different, someone better, someone more spiritual. It is about gently and patiently removing the layers of conditioning, distraction, and delusion that obscure the radiant, peaceful, and wise nature that has been your birthright all along. The goal is not to create a life free from noise, challenges, and pain, for such a life is an impossibility. The goal is to cultivate a mind that can remain spacious, a heart that can remain open, and a presence that can remain steady, even in the midst of the storm. The stillness we seek is not in the world outside. It is the quiet, unshakable center that lies within. This path does not teach us to escape from the world, but to fall in love with it, to engage with it more deeply, more sanely, and more compassionately than ever before. And so, we leave you here. At the beginning, you have been given the map, the tools, and the encouragement, but the journey itself must be walked by you. The latent capacity for profound peace, clarity, and freedom is not the exclusive property of ancient sages or secluded monastics. It is a fundamental potential of your own human consciousness. The key to unlocking it has been placed gently into your hands. Do not be daunted by the scope of the path. Do not worry about where it will lead. Simply begin. Begin where you are, with what you have. The journey of 1,000 miles does not begin with a single heroic leap, but with the simple, humble, and infinitely powerful act of taking one conscious breath. Right here, right now, as you feel the air enter your body, and as you feel it leave, you are on the path. You are home.